Chapter 1126, Who Dares Challenge Me? 3. Boom. The quaking thunder exploded thunderously the moment it struck the Saint King from the Huangdao clan. It was so loud that it temporarily deafened everyone present, and a terrifying energy immediately erupted, striking the Saint King like a heavy hammer. A 16th star quaking thunder contained the full-powered strike of a 16th star expert, and its power would vaguely exceed the strength of the person who had charged it up since it had been suppressed. Only experts at the same level of cultivation could withstand a quaking thunder. Blood shot out of the Saint King's mouth. He immediately paled and was blown back by the violent energy. He landed several kilometers away in a horrible condition. "I'll cut down a pillar of the Huangdao clan today." "Gus, you shouldn't have come here," the Grand Elder sternly said. Killing intent flickered in his eyes as he rushed over with his lance. He wanted to finish off the 15th star expert. "Gus, we can't hold back anymore," the other old man of the Huangdao clan called out as he fought against a Saint King of the 100-footed clan. With that, a sliver of determination appeared in the eyes of Gus, who had been injured by the quaking thunder. As the Grand Elder charged over, he pulled out a fist-sized quaking thunder from his space ring and immediately triggered it. The quaking thunder began to flash with light as a terrifying energy unsteadily pulsed out. "What? You actually have a 16th star quaking thunder as well?" The Grand Elder's expression changed, and he came to a screeching stop. He immediately retreated. At the same time, Gus threw the quaking thunder. It shot towards the Grand Elder as a streak of light with lightning-like speed. The Grand Elder dodged as hard as he could, but the sliver of presence from Gus within the quaking thunder had already locked onto him. It tailed him, and he could not shake it off. There was the unstable pulsing of powerful energy in the quaking thunder as well, so even freezing space could not stop it. The unstable pulsing was more than enough to break through any frozen space. In the end, the Grand Elder clenched his teeth and the lance in his hand exploded with a blinding light. He stabbed at the quaking thunder as hard as he could. Boom! Another deafening sound rang out. Although the quaking thunder had failed to land on the Grand Elder, it was still not pleasant to fend off a full-powered strike from a 16th star expert. He became quite injured as residual blood clung to the side of his lips. Imperial Sword Chi. With a furious roar, the Saint King of the Huangdao clan stood up. The giant sword in his hand shined with a blinding light, illuminating the surroundings. It was as dazzling as the sun. At the same time, a pressure from the surroundings descended from the sky, falling onto the Grand Elder like a mountain. The Tian-level Saint technique of the Huangdao clan. The Grand Elder's face changed, and he became extremely stern. The Tian-level Saint techniques of the Sea Realm were equivalent to Saint-tier battle skills on the Tian-Yuan continent. This one was being cast by a Saint King, so the power was enough to completely annihilate the surroundings. Gus pointed with his sword and a golden sword chi immediately shot through the air with a terrifying force. It radiated with destructive energy as it flew toward the Grand Elder. The sword chi glistened with a golden light, dyeing the entire world a cold color. It possessed vast power and was almost unstoppable since it was filled with supreme force. The Grand Elder roared at the sky as his hair danced about despite the absence of wind. He immediately turned into a centipede-like sea beast that had several hundred feet. He was coated by a layer of pitch-black scales as 9 sharp spikes extended from his back. Suddenly, one of the spikes broke off and quickly shot at the golden sword chi. This was his greatest trump card. He had basically used a powerful attack by mutilating himself. Each spike was forged by his essence blood and was extremely powerful. They were much stronger than his own strength and could easily injure a Saint King that was 1 cultivation level higher. Although the Grand Elder of the 100-footed clan was a Saint King, he did not possess any Tian-level Saint techniques. All he could do was use something like this to face the attack head-on. Tian-level Saint techniques could not be comprehended with strength alone. They relied on the comprehension level of the person and that person's compatibility with the Saint technique. A few clever and talented people could grasp Tian-level saint techniques at Saint Ruler, while there were others who could not comprehend a single one even after spending most of their lives as saint kings. Creating Tian-level saint techniques was even more difficult than comprehending one. Since ancient times, countless saint kings have appeared, but an extremely low number of them ever created a Tian-level saint technique. They could be described as virtually non-existent. The Imperial Sword Chi was a Tian-level saint technique near the stronger end, so its power was not something that the Grand Elder's trump card could rival. When the Golden Sword Chi and Spike collided, the two of them became locked in a stalemate. After some time, the spike turned to dust, and the Golden Sword Chi continued toward the Grand Elder. The Grand Elder bellowed and another two spikes shot toward the Golden Sword Chi. The Sword Chi finally disappeared, in the end, after the 3 spikes. I'd like to see how many times you can block it. Imperial Sword Chi. Gus sneered and cast the Tian-level saint technique a second time. A Golden Sword Chi shot out again. Casting Tian-level saint techniques will exhaust you. I'd like to see how many times you can cast it. The Grand Elder did not give in and gave a cold response. Without any hesitation, he shot out another 2 spikes at the Sword Chi. After cutting down most of the Sword Chi's power, he dispersed the weakened Sword Chi with a full-powered attack in the end. He had now used 5 of his spikes, only 4 remained. The Grand Elder and Gus had already become fully drawn into the battle. They began to fight in an attempt to take each other's lives without holding anything back. Their battle was the most intense out of all the ones present. The other 2 Saint Kings from both clans had always been fighting while the Saint Rulers clashed with one another. Originally, the enmity between the Huangdao clan and Hundred-Footed clan was already irresolvable. Their 2 ancestors were currently in seclusion since they were heavily injured. Since the 2 parties had met, they naturally began to blaze with hatred and began to try to take each other's lives. Gus had already cast the Tian-level saint technique 4 times in a row. His heavy wounds deepened and rapidly worsened. He could not help but vomit a mouthful of blood. He was running out of power. The 100-meter-long Grand Elder had already used up all of his 9 spikes. He returned to human form and sneered with a pale face, "You've finally run out of power to cast your Tian-level saint techniques. You will die now." With that, the Grand Elder pulled out 3 quaking thunders from his space ring and threw them at Gus. These were 15th star quaking thunders. They were not as powerful as a 16th star quaking thunder, but they still could deal an attack from a 15th star expert. The heavily injured Grand Elder could no longer display his peak strength, so he could only make it up by using the quaking thunders. Gus, the other Saint King of the Huangdao clan, called out. He wanted to help Gus, but he was obstructed by his opponent. He was unable to break free from the battle. With a massive explosion, Gus was reduced to a bloody mess. One of his arms had broken, and the jade bottle which contained the divine water shattered. All of the water inside splashed out, but it did not fall to the ground. Instead, it floated in the air, having broken into countless droplets, like rain, by the violent ripples of energy. The Grand Elder of the Hundred-Footed clan took advantage of this moment to attack again. His lance turned into a streak of silver light as he stabbed toward Gus' forehead. He wanted to wipe out Gus' soul. The other Saint King of the Huangdao clan roared out in sorrow, but he was in no situation to consider for others. All he could do was watch helplessly as Gus was killed. Killing off Gus, the Grand Elder immediately began to collect the scattered divine water, returning it all into a single jade bottle. Something suddenly happened. A middle-aged man silently appeared before the Grand Elder. He chopped off the Grand Elder's arm with the jade bottle and grabbed it before quickly retreating into the distance. Chapter 1127, Who Dares Challenge Me? 4. Something suddenly happened. A middle-aged man silently appeared before the Grand Elder. He chopped off the Grand Elder's arm with the jade bottle and grabbed it before quickly retreating into the distance. At a crucial moment, one of the Saint Kings, who had been spectating from afar, finally ran out of patience and decided to interfere. With his arms severed, the Grand Elder of the 100-footed clan cried out miserably. He yelled furiously, "You must be sick of living for stealing something of our 100-footed clan. We'll wipe out your entire clan." As he said that, he used his remaining arm to pull out 2 quaking thunders, and he threw them at the middle-aged man who had stolen the divine water of the world. They were all 15th star quaking thunders. Although the 100-footed clan had brought many quaking thunders with them this time, they only possessed one at the 16th star. The rest were all at the 15th star, so they were bluffing earlier. The Saint King who had stolen the divine water was at the 4th heavenly layer. He stood at the 15th star and was only a step away from the 16th. Unless he was caught off guard, it would be very difficult to injure him with 15th star quaking thunders. After setting off the quaking thunders from afar, he continued to flee into the distance without even looking back. My soul is injured and I need this divine water of the world to recover. Sir, you should give it to me. At this moment, a disheveled old man silently appeared. He just happened to block the middle-aged man. His shriveled hand gently shot out with a layer of energy. The palm strike did not seem to possess any power, but all Saint Kings could feel an extremely forceful and tough energy present inside. The middle-aged man's face grew cold. He hurled a punch with vast energy, striking the palm of the old man. However, he felt like he had hit cotton when his fist made contact. The supreme energy in his fist had nowhere to go. It had mostly been absorbed by the old man's palm strike, and after that, a brutal energy leaked out of the palm. It struck the middle-aged man and knocked him away, where his entire hand had almost been shattered. The heaven-ending palm. You're the tyrant of the West Sea, Nicholas. The middle-aged man's face slightly changed. Although they were at the same level of cultivation, the middle-aged man became extremely afraid. Nicholas was a famed expert. Not only was his cultivation method special, reaching the level where firmness existed within softness, he could display supreme battle prowess. He himself was an extremely powerful sea beast of antiquity as well, possessing extraordinary talent and great strength. There was even a rumor in the past that he had killed a 5th heavenly layer Saint King when he was only at the 3rd heavenly layer, causing countless people in the sea realm to fall into an uproar. His strength in the sea realm was basically unparalleled among people of similar cultivation levels. Since you know my name, why don't you leave behind the divine water? Nicholas asked with a husky voice. You're renowned in the West Sea. I'm obviously not your opponent when you were at your peak, but your soul's injured now, so your strength had been greatly affected. Why should I fear you? The middle-aged man responded with a deep voice. Hee, my soul may be injured, but my strength is unaffected. You're unwilling to hand up the divine water, so it looks like I can only retrieve it from you myself. Nicholas coldly chuckled before quickly charging toward the middle-aged man. On another side, the experts of the 100-footed clan and Huangdao clan remained locked in battle. They hadn't stopped fighting because of the divine water. Their resentment for each other had slowly overcome their reasoning. The divine water had already changed hands, so the surrounding Saint Kings obviously stopped paying any attention to them. They all turned to Nicholas and the other person as their eyes flickered with a gleam of light. Zhou Chuyun and Lu Jun had retreated to several kilometers away long ago. Blood dripped from the corner of their mouths, having been injured by the ripples of battle. The current situation had already developed to a point where they could not change it. Although Nicholas possessed an injured soul, he was still extremely powerful. He clashed with the 4th heavenly layer Saint King 100 times already, beating the middle-aged man to the point where he was heavily injured and bloodied. A visible hole had even appeared in his chest, created by a palm strike from Nicholas. Killing intent had already grown densely in Nicholas' eyes. He immediately appeared before the middle-aged man, and he struck his head mercilessly as a dense layer of soft energy coated his hand. Nicholas, I'll give you the divine water since you want it. The middle-aged man finally gave in and threw the divine water near the crowd of people. With that, Nicholas immediately gave up on his fight with the middle-aged man. He shot after the divine water with lightning-like speed, crossing 100 meters instantly and grabbing the jade battle. 3 Saint Kings began to move. Vast energy wrapped around them as they attacked Nicholas in unison, beginning an intense battle with him. Nicholas was extremely powerful. The power of his heaven-ending palm was unparalleled. Even while fighting equally with 3 Saint Kings, he vaguely appeared to have gained the upper hand. A few other Saint Kings watched the fight from a distance. They all became rather tempted to interfere when they saw this. Nicholas glanced around and sneered, "You're looking to die if you want to fight me with just your strength." Suddenly, Nicholas' eyes became filled with malevolence. Red light immediately glowed from his eyes, enveloping 2 of the people he was fighting and temporarily stunning them. It's said that Nicholas' original form is a demonic dragon. That's his natural ability. It targets the soul and is impossible to guard against, a Saint King said with a deep voice as he watched from afar. With a flash, Nicholas suddenly appeared beside the 2 stunned Saint Kings. His shriveled hand struck their heads and smashed them in, wiping out their souls. The remaining Saint King immediately became utterly terrified. He had no interest in the battle anymore and turned around to flee. Nicholas did not pursue. He gazed at the Saint Kings who watched on rather threateningly before opening the bottle cap to drink the divine water. Many Saint Kings did nothing, having been stunned by Nicholas' strength. However, there were still some people who did not fear him. At that moment, the 4 old men stepped forward in unison. Pitch-black metal swords appeared in their hands. These were swords forged from an extremely tough meteorite that possessed odd inscriptions. They then swung out at the same time, sending 4 sword chi toward Nicholas. The sword chi was extremely sharp and possessed a presence that surged into the sky, vastly different from any ordinary sword chi. Nicholas' eyes grew cold. He shattered the sword chi with his palm strikes and sneered, "You 4 want to fight me? You're overestimating yourselves." Scorn filled Nicholas' eyes. The 4 old men were only at the 3rd heavenly layer. Their sword chi was very powerful, but it was nothing noteworthy to him. The 4 old men said nothing. They stood in a formation and charged up, embroiling in a great battle with Nicholas. They assisted each other in both attack and defense, retreating and advancing perfectly. They were extremely rhythmic, nowhere near as powerful as Nicholas yet able to fight him to a stalemate. They could even vaguely suppress him. "I never thought that you 4 would actually know formations for joint attacks. I sure have underestimated you 4, sneered Nicholas. His eyes became evil-looking once more and 2 streaks of red light shot out. Infinite sword formation. The 4 old men yelled and their metal swords layered upon each other to form a square. Their power actually joined together and a shocking sword chi shot out formed the center of the square, obliterating the red light from Nicholas' eyes. It continued toward Nicholas without weakening at all. Nicholas dodged the energy that was enough to destroy soul attacks. He stared at the 4 old men in disbelief and involuntarily cried out, "How is this possible? Your sword chi can repel my innate ability." Nicholas' innate ability was an attack that targeted the soul. It could catch people off guard, and in so many years of life and death battles, he would always use his innate ability to turn the tides. He had never suffered defeat. He had fought many battles against people with much greater cultivation than him and had killed so many experts who were stronger than him just with his innate talent. There was no one who could come out unscathed from the ability. The 4 old men remained cold and silent. They looked at one another and immediately changed their formation. They encircled Nicholas from 4 different locations and all launched an attack with their full power at Nicholas. They actually forced him to retreat, and soon many vicious slashes littered his body. Nicholas also used everything he had. Surging energy leaked out of his body, but whenever he wanted to use his full strength to kill off one of them, the 3 others would strike out with a fatal attack, forcing him to give up on the offense and take up the defense. It was extremely annoying for him. This is a very powerful sword formation. Some of the Saint Kings in the distance saw through the attacks and cried out in surprise. The sword formation is extremely profound. If they didn't have the sword formation, it would have been impossible for the 4 of them to fight Nicholas even-handedly. Nicholas is a sea beast of antiquity who has killed people above him before after all, said the bloodied, middle-aged man. He was the same person who had stolen the divine water of the world and then had been injured by Nicholas. Supreme sword formation. One of the four old men cried out. They worked together very succinctly, pulling back their swords in unison. A powerful sword formation radiated from their bodies before surging into the sky. At that moment, the four of them seemed to have become swords that stood upright in the world. An eternal glow radiated from them, and in unison, their presences began to skyrocket. They reached the peak of the fourth heavenly layer in the blink of an eye, almost reaching the fifth. This was not their strength, but the strength of combining their powers through the sword formation. It allowed their powers to erupt for a short moment. Suddenly, the four of them moved. They left behind an illusionary afterimage where they had been standing and shot toward Nicholas at the same time with unbelievable speed. Spurt. 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 The four metal swords stabbed into Nicholas at the same time as a brutal sword chi erupted from the swords. It reduced Nicholas' body to a bloody mess. Just as Nicholas' soul wanted to flee, a terrifying suction appeared from the four metal swords. It actually drew his soul toward the metal swords before it was quartered and absorbed by the swords. No. Nicholas' terrifying howl of despair could vaguely be heard, but there was no more sound afterward. The old men remained as cold as before, slowly withdrawing their bloody swords. Afterward, they pulled out a towel to carefully wipe off the blood. The divine water of the world with Nicholas obviously entered their hands as well. Fear filled the eyes of the spectating Saint Kings. Nicholas' death had affected them greatly at a mental level. Nicholas' present strength was at the fourth heavenly layer of Saint King. He was strong enough to rival some new 16th star experts, yet he had actually been slain so easily by four old men of unknown origins. The four of them had even killed him unscathed, to everyone's disbelief. The experts of the Huangdao clan and Hundred-Footed clan remained locked in a death battle. They had completely given up on the divine water as their battle became extremely intense. It had reached a point where they would not stop until one side completely died. Leave the divine water. At this moment, a furious roar rang out from the distance. Jian Chen had finally returned. He left behind a blur as he ran, moving extremely quick. Chapter 1128, Who Dares Challenge Me? 5. Jian Chen shot over from the distance as his presence surged into the sky, causing the air to tremble. His eyes were cold and a chilling killing intent flickered in them. It's Senior Yang Yutian. Fantastic, Senior Yang Yutian's finally returned. Zhou Chuyun and Lu Jun both became filled with excitement while they hid in the distance. They seemed to have grasped a ray of hope in their moment of despair. The battle for the divine water had completely devolved into a fight between Saint Kings. They were in no shape to interfere and even lacked the right to speak. All they could do was watch as many Saint Kings fought over the divine water as if it was theirs already, which caused them to become extremely irritated and feel like they had been wronged. When they saw Yang Yutian return, they immediately became filled with energy. Who is this person? What a powerful presence. What an arrogant person. Even Nicholas of the West Sea has died. Is he stronger than Nicholas? Many people quickly glanced at Jian Chen. A few Saint Kings even sneered. They did not believe Jian Chen could win against the four mysterious old men with the metal swords. They thought he was just running to his death. The old men stood in a similar posture as before. They seemed to be at ease, but it was a different case in reality. They could use their sword formations at any moment. They all stared at Jian Chen as they frowned slightly and sternly. It's him. He's actually returned at this moment, said one of the old men. The four of them knew just how powerful Jian Chen was. He dared to venture into the mountains of the sleeping dragon all by himself and managed to kill one of the most powerful existences on the peak. He was far beyond what they could deal with. The sword formations used together by the four of them were very powerful, but they were not strong enough to defeat people who were far more powerful than them. I can sense a silver of threat from that person. His strength is definitely far beyond what we can deal with. We didn't come here for the divine water of the world, so we shouldn't offend an expert like him over something that's useless to us, one of the old men communicated through a technique. Fear filled his eyes. After killing Nicholas, the four of them had subconsciously become the most powerful group present. The divine water of the world was with them now, so they obviously became the center of attention for many people. Many of them watched Jian Chen with a sneer. They seemed to have already witnessed the moment Jian Chen died to the four metal swords. After all, even Nicholas, who could battle fifth heavenly layer Saint Kings, was dead. They did not doubt the four old men at all, and once they used their powerful sword formations, they could rival experts of the sixth heavenly layer. Jian Chen quickly approached the area. He glanced around before locking onto the four old men who possessed the divine water of the world. He strode for them. His presence was pressing, and with every step, it would constantly increase. Senior Yang Yutian, you've finally returned. The divine water of the world would have been taken away by them if you hadn't returned. Zhou Chuyun and Lu Jun ran over obsequiously and followed Jian Chen like servants. They were in high spirits and smiles plastered their faces. Jian Chen coldly stared at the four old men and said, I spent so much effort to lead away those two feral beasts at the peak of the 16th star, so the divine water didn't end up with them. It sure was easy for you to take advantage of others' work. A spectating Saint King immediately broke into laughter when he heard what Jian Chen had said. He mocked, Brat, aren't you going a little too far with your jokes? Do you really have the ability to lead away two peak 16th star beasts? Jian Chen's presence was powerful, but it was only at the third heavenly layer of Saint King without the Emperor armament. Many Saint Kings obviously saw his strength since he was not hiding it, so they did not treat him with any importance. Only the four old men were exceptions. They weren't tricked by the strength Jian Chen currently displayed. He's still a little off from the peak of the 15th star. He's not even as great as me. Brat, let me witness your supreme techniques and see just what you use to lead away those two 16th star beasts, sneered a man who seemed to be in his 20s. He was very burly, like a huge bear. He was 4 meters tall and his eyes were filled with scorn. A huge, two-headed axe appeared in his hand, and then he swung it. The axe immediately began to expand, becoming 100 meters long instantly. It traveled toward Jian Chen's head with an almost unstoppable force. You dare to be arrogant even when you're just at the fourth heavenly layer. You're courting death. Jian Chen coldly said. The Emperor armament immediately appeared in his hand. Swinging out, he used his sword, which was a little over a meter long, to receive the 100-meter-long axe. The two weapons that did not match in size collided in the air. With a boom, the axe was actually sent flying by Jian Chen's sword, breaking free from the man's grasp. The supreme force actually shook the man's hand numb after passing through the axe, and he stumbled a few steps back. Many people's mouths were agape once they registered what had happened. It was unbelievable. The burly man was at the peak of the 15th star, yet he could not even withstand a single blow. The man had attacked with everything he had, and it would have been very difficult for Saint Kings at the third heavenly layer to receive. As a result, Jian Chen did not plan on letting him go. He coldly stared at the man and took a step forward, reappearing 100 meters away. He seemed to have arrived before the man instantaneously as he thrust the Emperor armament toward the man's head. The man was surprised. Jian Chen's attack was just too fast, so fast he could not dodge. He immediately roared and a shield completely condensed from energy appeared in front of him. The Emperor armament struck the shield and the shield immediately shattered. The Emperor armament passed through it like a hot knife through butter, stabbing through the man's head under his terrified gaze. His soul was wiped out then and there. A fourth heavenly layer Saint King had actually been killed in a single attack. Without any doubt, the Saint King had become the one who had died the quickest. Jian Chen pulled out the Emperor armament like it was nothing. Blood dripped from the sharp tip of the sword as he coldly looked around. He emotionlessly said, "Is there anyone else who wants to challenge me? Come at me." All the spectating Saint King's expressions changed with that. They all took a few steps back. At that moment, their opinions of Jian Chen finally changed. Shock flooded their faces as their gazes became filled with fear. They dared not meet Jian Chen's eyes. The battle between the 100-footed clan and Huangdao clan stopped as well because of the changing situation. They all stared at Jian Chen in shock as deep fear appeared in their eyes. Zhou Chuyun wiped away the blood from the corner of his mouth. He pointed at the Saint Kings and complained about them, reporting everything that had happened before. No, that was definitely not the case. Senior, it was all a misunderstanding before, and we didn't touch your people. I hope you can verify that, a skinny old man hurriedly explained. He would definitely not admit what he had said before, and the other Saint Kings all hurried to explain themselves as well. None of them dared to show any arrogance after personally witnessing Jian Chen's strength. Where did the wounds on the two of you come from? Jian Chen turned around and asked. From the ripples of battle. Zhou Chuyun and Lu Jun became rather red in the face, feeling embarrassed. Jian Chen did not delve into the matter. Instead, he turned to the four old men and killing intent flickered in his eyes. The water was taken by us from Nicholas of the Four Seas. If we didn't stop him, he probably would have ingested it long ago, said the old man who held the divine water of the world. Afterward, he tossed the jade bottle to Jian Chen without any unwillingness. Jian Chen caught the battle before glancing over the metal swords used by the old men. A sliver of light flickered through the depths of his eyes as he committed them to memory. After that, he opened the bottle cap to check and found that the water had indeed remained the same. Jian Chen put the bottle away before giving an order to Zhou Chuyun, call Zhou Lin and the others. We're leaving. Zhou Chuyun immediately went to find Zhou Lin and the others. The Heaven Saint Masters were very smart. As soon as they noticed something was wrong with the situation, they fled 20 kilometers. They avoided all the ripples of battle and returned with Zhou Chuyun unscathed. As Zhou Chuyun went off to get them, Lu Jun took advantage of the moment to check through all the corpses of the beasts. He had found a few thunderstones in the end and had removed all the space rings of the Saint Kings that had fallen in battle. Afterward, he passed all of them courteously to Jian Chen. The surrounding Saint Kings could only watch as Lu Jun removed all the space rings. Although they were tempted, they did nothing. Jian Chen left with the people of the Blue Sky Adventurers, leaving behind a large group of people who had failed to obtain the divine water of the world. They still stood there, mouths agape. The four old men stared deeply at Jian Chen's back as he walked away. Only when Jian Chen had completely disappeared from their vision did they look at each other. As if their minds were connected, they walked in Jian Chen's direction in unison. Afterward, all the Saint Kings that had gathered there left. All of them were filled with pity since they had just watched divine water of the world get taken away. Pay for Gus' life. Suddenly, the remaining Saint King of the Huangdao clan bellowed out. He quickly charged toward the heavily injured Grand Elder of the 100-footed clan who was missing an arm, but he was blocked by the other Saint King. The two of them began to fight once again. Lan Mo did not participate in the battle between the two clans. Instead, he had backed far away long ago. He was currently pale-faced as his legs shook. He's actually a 16th star expert. I've actually provoked a 16th star expert. Lan Mo was filled with lingering fear and a cold sweat flooded his forehead. Only now did he understand exactly what he had provoked. A 16th star expert was an existence that could easily wipe out his entire clan. It's fortunate that expert isn't petty. Lan Mo felt lucky as he thought to himself. Young Master Lan Mo, I seem to have forgotten about you. At this moment, a cold voice rang from afar. Lan Mo immediately gave a violent jolted when he heard the terrifyingly familiar voice. He turned around in fear. All he saw was Jian Chen, Zhou Chuyun, and the others. They had actually turned around and were making their way to him. Senior, at this moment, Lan Mo dared not to be prideful anymore. The arrogance he had displayed in Divine City had vanished long ago. He wanted to apologize, but he could not help but tremble under Jian Chen's sharp and cold glare. He did not even have the courage to speak. I had spared your life before, but you did not repent or change. You asked for it, Jian Chen coldly said. Afterward, he extended a finger and an azulate sword chi shot out. It pierced Lan Mo's forehead and wiped out his soul. He then turned around and walked off. Lu Jun quickly scurried over to his corpse and removed the space ring on his finger before immediately chasing after Jian Chen. Chapter 1129. Information on the Spirit. Jian Chen walked around the divine realm aimlessly with Zhou Chuyun and the others. They had no plans of leaving. Esteemed senior, you've already obtained the divine water of the world and more shouldn't appear in such a short amount of time. Zhou Chuyun spoke from behind Jian Chen. He had already ingested the Class 6 Radiant Spirit pulls from Jian Chen, so he had recovered from almost all of his injuries. He was mostly fine now. After a moment of silence, Jian Chen passed a small portion of the divine water to Zhou Chuyun and Lu Jun. He also gave them a few 15th star quaking thunders and said, I don't want to leave for now. Your lives will be threatened if you follow me around in the depths of the divine realm, so you should return first. No, Senior Yang Yutian. We've followed you for the entire journey, and we've already benefited greatly. How can we take something that belongs to you? Shocked by the unexpected action, Zhou Chuyun and Lu Jun dared to not accept the items from Jian Chen. Take it. If it weren't for you leading the way, I wouldn't have been able to obtain the divine water of the world. Plus, we already agreed to split things with you before. Jian Chen shoved the divine water of the world and the 15th star quaking thunders into their hands before bidding farewell to them. He had obtained far too little divine water. It was probably only enough for Hong Lian to recover her strength. The several dozen elites of the Flame Mercenaries also needed divine water of the world to increase the quality of their souls and their talent so they could reach Saint Ruler. As a result, Jian Chen needed to find more of the water. Zhou Chuyun, Lu Jun, and the other Heaven Saint Master reluctantly separated with Jian Chen. They embarked on their trip back. During the few days they were with Jian Chen, they had experienced a delight they had never experienced before while crossing through the divine realm, filling them with enthusiasm. The entire experience would become something they would cherish. However, they also knew that this feeling was not permanent because their relationship with Jian Chen was not very deep. They were just cooperating. Senior Yang Yutian, I will remember you forever. Before they separated, Zhou Lin stared at Jian Chen in admiration and respect. Her eyes were filled with reluctance. Jian Chen watched them disappear into the distance. He had silently helped Zhou Chuyun so much only because they were both of the same race. Jian Chen seemed to have seen his past self in the people who worked so arduously to become more powerful in this foreign land. Jian Chen dismissed his thoughts. He suddenly said, the four of you have stalked me for so long. It's about time you appear. With that, 4 old men silently emerged from the bushes behind him. They did not make any sound, like ghosts. Jian Chen turned around and calmly looked at the 4 of them. He coldly asked, why are you following me? The 4 old men did not respond. They calmly stared at him and only after quite a while did someone talk. Sir, it seems like you've only come to the divine realm in search of the water. So what if that's the case? Jian Chen remained the same. Sir, we might be able to cooperate if you want to obtain even more of the water, the old man continued. Cooperate? Have you seen traces of more water? A gleam of light flashed through Jian Chen's eyes and his interest was immediately piqued. We haven't seen other traces, but we know the source, said an old man. What? The source of the divine water? Jian Chen was shocked. He could no longer keep his composure. Tell me what the source is like. Many years ago, we once ventured into the depths of the divine realm and caught sight of a lake bathed in rainbow light from afar. Divine water of the world poured out endlessly from the middle and most of it dropped into the lake. Only a very little amount hovered above the lake, floating about aimlessly through the entire divine realm, said the old man. He did not give any information as to where the lake was. A lake that shines with the colors of the rainbow. Is that the Spirit Sea? Jian Shen was greatly shaken. According to what they had said, it was extremely likely that they had seen the Spirit Sea. Once he found the Spirit Sea, the water would no longer be a problem. We can work together. What are your conditions? Jian Shen agreed without an hesitation. The information they had revealed was just too great of a temptation to him. We have no conditions. We only wish to travel together because there's extremely powerful formations that protect the source. It's very difficult for the four of us to break through, so we need helpers. Once we get through the formations, you can take the divine water, and we'll take what we need, said the old man. Pausing slightly, Jian Shen looked at the four of them as his eyes lit up. He gently smiled. The item you four need must be very valuable, right? It is indeed valuable to us, but it is useless to you. A metal sword appeared in the old man's hands as he continues, this is the weapon the four of use. It is not condensed from energy. It is instead forged from meteorites over several years. The item we need is a material for the sword, which can make it even more powerful. Jian Shen stared fixedly at the metal sword. He had been in this world for so long, yet all the weapons used by the experts he had come across were condensed from energy. Even Emperor armaments were the same. They were the solidification of energy, yet the four old men actually used metal swords as their weapons, clearly misfits compared to the rest of the world. Quite an extraordinary metal sword, I can actually feel the souls of many living beings in it, Jian Shen praised. The four old men before him were not simple. They took a different path of cultivation, which could be understood just from their weapons. Jian Shen agreed with the four old men. He was very curious about their cultivation method, but he did not ask about it so boldly. Everyone had their secrets. The four old men lead the way, bringing Jian Shen in the direction of the source. After a conversation, Jian Shen had learned their names. They were very odd names, Ada, Air, Asen and ACI. These were their real names. At the start of names is usually used for a nickname, such as calling a character both you and I know, Changyanghu, as Ahu. The other parts of their names, after the apostrophe, compounds the strangeness because it basically means 1, 2, 3, and 4. Jian Shen had even learned that the four of them were actually brothers with the same parents. The three middle-aged men Jian Shen had killed in the cave a few days before were not connected to the four of them at all. They were only followers they had come across by chance. Jian Shen and the four of them did not discuss many things in detail. They were silent people and did not have much to say, always maintaining a cold face. Roar. Suddenly, an earth-shaking roar rang out. It caused the ground to shake as a 100-meter-tall ape with an axe on its shoulder furiously charged at Jian Shen. Jian Shen's face slightly changed. He said, "He's coming for me. I never thought he'd still be able to find me. Let's go." With that, Jian Shen and the four old men quickly ran off. They pushed their speed to the limit, throwing off the ape very soon. The ape's one of the most powerful existences in the divine realm. It's reached the 16th star and possesses extremely terrifying power, but fortunately, speed is his weakness, or we'd be in deep trouble, Ada said with a deep voice as fear appeared in his eyes. He understood the situation of the divine realm extremely well. However, the ground far away began to tremble again without much time. The huge ape had actually caught up again. Without any choice, the five of them began to run once again, shaking off the huge ape. This time, they stopped after running over 100 kilometers. ACI could not help but ask, "Yang Yutian, how did you provoke that ape? Why is it sticking to you and unwilling to let you go?" The four of them looked at Jian Shen. They felt victimized. They had done nothing at all, yet they had to suffer with Jian Shen and face the pursuit of a terrifying ape. "Before you started fighting over the divine water, I took away their child. Their child must have returned to them already. I just never thought that the ape would harbor resentment and would keep chasing after me," replied Jian Shen. The four old men looked at each other. They needed to hand it to Jian Shen for recklessly taking away the child of the two apes. Asen pulled out a bag of powder from his space ring. He said, "This is the powdered bones of feral beasts from the divine realm. Sprinkle it over you, and it should cover your scent. It'll prevent the ape from smelling you." Jian Shen accepted the powder with doubts. After a quick examination, he gently picked up a little of it and sprinkled it over him after confirming there was nothing wrong with it. He soon realized that Asen's bone dust really was effective. The ape had indeed stopped pursuing after Jian Shen had sprinkled the powder on him. The sense of smell of these beasts is very sensitive. The bone powder can only cover our scents temporarily. It won't hide us completely from the feral beasts, so we need to erase our presence as we travel and alert fewer beasts. The road ahead is relatively long. Very few people come to these depths to cull the feral beasts, so many extremely powerful existences have appeared after some time. They're very hard to deal with, explained Ada as he carefully made his way to the very depths with Jian Shen. The four of them had clearly entered the depths often. They possessed an extremely great understanding of the place. Not only could they tell what powerful feral beast was active in a certain region from a few small hints, they could even deduce what special and powerful types of feral beasts lived there depending on the environment and geography, allowing them to avoid many problems. There was even one time when they had entered the territory of the soaring ants. The four old men saw a few hints and backed out as soon as possible, avoiding the dangerous ants. Jian Shen admired the four old men for their rich experience. He had even began to wonder whether or not the four of them had been born in the divine realm because they knew the place too well. They virtually had the power to avoid disaster. Chapter 1130. A mystical space. Relatively fewer battles occurred along the way. They had chosen to avoid almost all the feral beasts they came across, so head-on battles happened very rarely. They spent more time traveling. Jian Shen and the four old men approached the end of the divine realm. They had traveled for 3 days and had finally arrived before a big, surging river. The pathway to the place is beneath the river. We discovered it accidentally. Follow us and don't get lost, said Ada. After that, the four of them all jumped into the river and disappeared, quickly sinking to the bottom. Jian Shen did not hesitate either. He allowed chaotic force to surge through his body, pushing his defenses to the extreme before jumping in as well. The river was very deep. Following the four old men from behind, Jian Shen sank for 10,000 meters before finally approaching the bottom. He endured the pressure from several dozen tons of water. It was enough to pulverize a normal person, but it was nothing to an expert like Jian Shen. It was not pitch black at the bottom of the river. A layer of drifting sand glowed with a faint blue light, dyeing the bottom of the lake blue and making it seem like a wonderland. It was extremely pretty. A type of mutated fish lived down there. They were extremely powerful, and some of the more powerful ones could even threaten saint rulers. They attacked Jian Shen and the four old men from time to time. The four old men had already drawn their metal swords. They slashed the fish in half and a blue liquid flowed from the dead fish. The fish did not possess red blood but blue blood. Jian Shen would also send Azulet's sword chi toward the fish that attacked him from time to time. The fish were not powerful, so the sword chi was enough. Jian Shen and the four old men traveled upriver. After traveling several thousand meters, a 5-meter-wide hole appeared in front of them. The hole was completely hidden by the river and could only be discovered at the bottom. Jian Shen followed Ada and the others into the hole. There was still a lot of drifting sand that glowed with blue light there. The sand was neither metal nor rock, but the particles were much larger in size, around thumb-sized. Jian Shen picked up a handful of the particles and examined them. Afterward, he said to the four old men through a communication technique, "You should collect some of this. It's a material for forging weapons. If you add in some of this, it can greatly increase the power of your swords." Jian Shen had already secretly asked the sword spirits and confirmed that the blue sand particles were a type of material. However, their quality was just far too low and would not be helpful when forging the azulate swords. However, it was a high-quality material to their metal swords. The four of them became stunned by Jian Chen's message. They looked at him in shock. They never would have thought that Jian Chen would understand more about forging weapons than them, which was the reason why they became shocked. The four of them did not say much. All of them collected some of the pebble-like sand before continuing on. The deep blue hole was filled with water, so Jian Chen and the four of them could not speak. All they could do was communicate using techniques. We'll reach our destination after we pass through here. It's a brand new world in there, so be careful, Ada informed Jian Chen. When they reached the end of the hole, there was not a rock face but a region of twisting, blurry space. It was not the first time the four old men had come here. They passed through the blurry space with much familiarity before vanishing. Jian Chen hesitated slightly and secretly made some preparations. Afterward, he entered the distorted space as well and vanished from the tunnel. Stepping out, Jian Chen's vision suddenly returned. He quickly glanced around and discovered that he seemed to have come to another world to his shock. However, before he could observe anything in more detail, he suddenly felt weightless. He actually began to fall. Jian Chen stabilized himself very quickly. He discovered that he had actually appeared at an altitude of several hundred meters after passing through the tunnel. There was an extremely slippery rock face below him, and he just happened to emerge in the center of it. The tunnel he had emerged from was blurry and unclear. This is our destination, where the divine water of the world is sourced. Ada and the others levitated at the same altitude as Jian Chen. There was no joy on their faces, only seriousness. Jian Chen looked forward and immediately became overjoyed. A huge lake lay over 10 kilometers away from him and water constantly shot out of the center. It created a 10-meter-tall spray. Some slightly multicolored divine water floated atop the lake before falling back into it. An extremely small portion of the divine water drifted from the lake and then weirdly disappeared. A spirit sea. This is a spirit sea. Jian Chen rejoiced inside. He had heard about the spirit sea from the sword spirits, so he obviously recognized it at first glance. Obtaining the divine water of the world will definitely be difficult. A powerful layer of formations surround the source and a group of extremely powerful beasts cultivate on the outer layers. These beasts have all ingested the water and possess intelligence, so they are much harder to deal with than the ones outside, Asen said with a deep voice. Jian Chen glanced over and his joy disappeared very quickly. It was gradually replaced by a sternness. He had discovered that the spirit sea was just as Asen had described, covered by a powerful formation. Over 30 mountainous feral beasts gathered outside the formation and every single one of them radiated with vast presences. Even the weakest one was at the 7th heavenly layer of Saint King, while the strongest was at the great perfection of Saint King, and there were multiple at each layer. Suddenly, Jian Chen's heart skipped a beat. He stared at a smaller and unimpressive beast in shock as his heart surged. A Class 9 feral beast. There's actually a Class 9 feral beast here. Jian Chen exclaimed inside. He was filled with disbelief. There was actually a beast as powerful as a Saint Emperor among them. Jian Chen became grim. With so many terrifying beasts guarding the area, it was impossible for them to venture into the spirit sea. Looks like I need to get Rui Jin and the others to help out, Jian Chen sighed inside. He had come across powerful foes he could not overcome himself. Don't worry. These beasts may be very terrifying, but they are not without weaknesses. The four of us once stayed here in secret for several centuries, so we know their habits like the back of our hands. Every 100 years, the formations here will become unstable. It will disturb the surroundings and isolate the area, making the region extremely unstable. At that moment, the beast's senses and smell will be affected. That will be the perfect time for us to enter. There's not just one layer of formations here. There's another 2 layers hidden inside. The 3 layers divide the area into 3 regions. The region where the beasts stay is only within the first layer of formations. They inhabit something like an alternate space, so they can't discover us unless we enter the first layer of formations. All we need to do now is wait for the formation to become unstable. Then we will take advantage of when the senses of the beasts are at their weakest and quickly pass through the first and second layer of formations. These beasts can't pass through the second layer, so it's impossible for them to injure us. How much time is there until the formations become unstable again? Jian Chen asked. We've calculated it accurately. There should be half a month to a month left. No longer than 3 months. With that, Jian Chen temporarily gave up on the idea of letting out Rui Jin and the other two. If he could, he wanted to use his own efforts to obtain everything he needed. He did not want to rely on others too much. Afterward, Jian Chen, Ada, and the other 3 waited for half a month, finally witnessing the instability that occurred once every century. Wild streams of energy suddenly appeared as the 3 layers of formations up ahead violently pulsed. The space up ahead became extremely distorted, such that one's line of sight became completely obscured. One's vision was reduced to a blurry, chaotic world, where all senses were nullified by the distorted space. It's now. Let's go. Ada yelled out and quickly charged toward the formations with his 3 brothers. The instability of the formations would not last long, so they did not have much time. They needed to use every single second they had. Jian Chen used the illusory flash to tail them closely. They crossed over 10 kilometers in the blink of an eye, quickly approaching the first layer of formations. The 4 brothers then began to advance using an odd sequence of steps. This was the key to the formation. It had been invented by the 4 of them after years of intensive study. Jian Chen had been warned long ago. He did not recklessly charge around as he entered the formation, and instead he followed the 4 brothers' rhythmic pace. In the end, they passed into the first region of space without any obstructions, entering the same world as the beasts. The beasts were greatly affected by the instability of the formations. They had lost all sense of the situation around them. They could not see or smell, possessing no idea that other people had already entered the region. However, the 5 of them were exactly the same. They held hands with each other as they advanced, afraid that they would be separated. We still have roughly 10 minutes, Ada said through a communication technique. Afterward, the 5 of them formed a straight line as they made their way to the second region purely by instinct. At this moment, Ada, who was at the very front, suddenly stopped, almost causing the people behind him to crash. A thunderous roar rang out from ahead soon after, causing the entire place to shake. Shit, I've collided with a beast. Ada could not help but swear. Everyone was affected by the distortion of space, so they could not see anything at all. They had determined their route outside, so once they deviated even slightly, it would be very easy for them to collide with a beast. All of their expressions changed before they immediately traveled around the beast they could not see. They continued to run to the second region since they would be safe once they entered it. Furious roars rang out behind them as the ground constantly trembled, causing the space to distort even more violently. The beast that Ada had crashed into before had already gained self-consciousness and was fairly intelligent. It immediately reached the conclusion that outsiders were intruding and became angered. Violent attacks began to permeate the first region. The beast had begun to attack the surrounding area extensively in attempt to find the intruders. Some of its attacks struck the first and second layers of the formation, causing them to violently pulse. The furious roars of the beast shook the earth. Even though all their senses were affected by the unstable formations, some nearby beasts still managed to hear the loud sounds. Furious roars immediately began to ring out one after another. They were communicating with the beasts around them using a special method. Chapter 1131, The Nirvanic Immortal Exalt. Shit, more and more feral beasts are detecting our presence. We need to get to the second layer of formations as soon as possible, said through a communication techniques. He was extremely stern. The beasts here were just too powerful. There were multiple beasts that were equal to Hall elders, and there was even a Class 9 feral beast hidden between them. The 5 of them began to move even faster. At that moment, all of them pushed their speed to the utmost limit, using every second they had to travel to the second region. They used everything they had hid before, no longer holding back at all. The beasts in the first region learned that there were intruders through communication techniques with one another. They all roared out furiously as they aimlessly attacked in an attempt to find the intruders. The ground trembled violently from the attacks and the entire region shook. The space there even began to ripple, showing signs of shattering even though it was much tougher than the space in the sea realm. The ground within the formation was clearly protected by a powerful and mysterious energy. No matter what attacks landed on the ground, the land was not destroyed. The space became even more unstable from the attacks of the beasts, so Jian Chen and the others could not use their various abilities to hurry along by controlling space. They all used the various movement techniques they knew to travel extremely fast. Jian Chen used the illusory flash to stick close behind the old men. They continued to hold hands with one another to avoid becoming lost. Terrifying energy ripples from the attacks swept past them. The powerful attacks from the beasts landed beside them many times, almost injuring them. If it were not for their strength, just the ripples of energy would have been enough to stop them from advancing or even heavily injure them. Ada and the 3 others all became extremely stern. They clenched their teeth tightly as sweat poured from their foreheads. At that moment, they felt like a few kilometers, which was usually nothing to them, was extremely far away. It was impossible for them to travel at their usual speeds in the space shaken up by energy. Spurt. Suddenly, ACI vomited a mouthful of blood. His chest was randomly struck by a fist-sized ball of energy, and his flesh completely disappeared there. He became heavily injured. ACI tightly clenched his teeth and endured. He continued toward the second region without slowing down at all. Finally, they successfully reached the second layer of formations before quickly entering it. However, before they could relax, Ada said, "Crap, the formations changed from the attacks of those beasts. The method we originally comprehended to get through here has become useless." Air, ASIN, and ACIS expressions all drastically changed. They all called out without a second thought, "Retreat, let's retreat and get out." Comprehending the method to enter the formation was not something that could be completed in a short moment. They did not have much time right now, so they could not slowly study the formation. They immediately began to retreat, wanting to leave the formation. Otherwise, all the beasts would see them once the formation stabilized. There would only be death for them at that point. As they ran back, all of them sustained some injuries. Even Jian Chen was hit as well. His left arm had been clawed to a bloody mess. When the 4 old men made it back to the first layer of formations, their faces changed once more. Ada cried out, "We're in deep trouble now." The formation out had also changed from the attacks of the beasts. "We can't leave." "What?" Air and the others all became shocked with that. Despair filled their eyes. They had all realized the problem. They were trapped in there with a group of terrifying beasts, and the beasts would definitely not let them go. At this moment, the formations gradually began to stabilize. The distorted space rapidly recovered and the blurriness slowly disappeared. "We don't have any more time. We're dead if we still don't get out," ACI yelled in a panic. The 4 of them were utterly panic-stricken right now. They had lost all composure, only Jian Chen was the exception. "Maybe this will work," said Jian Chen. Afterward, he let out the white tiger from the saint artifact and said, "Xiao Bai, quickly take us out of here." Jian Chen immediately jumped onto its back and told Ada and the 3 others to grab onto its wings. He planned on using the white tiger's natural ability to ignore formations and spatial barriers to take them out. Without any hesitation, the white tiger attempted to charge out with Jian Chen. However, when it hit the formation, it did not directly pass through like usual and was instead blocked. The white tiger growled and attempted to get through the formation again. However, it still failed. It was trapped in the formation with Jian Chen and the others. Jian Shen was filled with disbelief with that. He dismounted the white tiger and gruffly said, "The formations here are weird. They aren't as simple as they seem." As he said that, he sent the white tiger back into the saint artifact. The formations finally stabilized while they tried to leave with the white tiger. All of them were exposed to the beasts. Roar. With an earth-shaking roar, all the eyes of the beasts became bloodshot. They became filled with a ruthless bloodlust. Although they all possessed intelligence, the bloodthirsty instinct within them remained. Several beasts immediately began to attack Jian Shen. The weakest was at the 7th heavenly layer of Saint King, and there was even one at the 9th heavenly layer that charged over. The feral beasts all varied in appearance. Some were like large cats while others seemed to be the amalgamation of several animals. It was impossible to name them. Jian Shen drew his emperor armament and charged at the beasts. Ada and the 3 others also quickly formed a sword formation to fend off the beasts, but the disparity between their strength was just far too great. Although their sword formations were very strong, they were still not strong enough to defend against a single swipe from many of the beasts. They all were thrown back as they vomited blood. Ada's entire arm had been crushed and pulled off by the jaws of a beast. It was painful that he could not help but shriek. His severed arm was devoured noisily. Brother! Asen, and Aci all cried out. They knew that it would be very difficult for Ada to recover his severed arm since there was no medicine that could regrow limbs. Quick, use the final forbidden technique and flee. We can't stay here, or we'll end up dead for sure, Ada called out as he resisted the pain. His voice was extremely hoarse. Afterward, he turned to Jian Shen and said, "Brother Yang Yutian, forgive us. We'll be leaving first. I hope we can meet again in the future." With that, the 4 of them immediately gathered together in a weird formation. They placed their swords horizontally against their chests and chanted, "Of the vast world, all is one. With the Nirvanic sword formation, only we are supreme. With the 4 swords as one, all shall be destroyed." With their chant, the 4 metal swords immediately began to shine with blinding light. At that moment, the light from the 4 swords bonded together before enveloping the 4 of them and surging into the sky. They vanished at that very moment. In the blink of an eye, only Jian Shen was left in the formation, stuck in a difficult battle against the beasts. Jian Shen already knew that he had no other choice now. There was no hope of victory at all just by himself, so he immediately stopped holding back and released Rui Jin, Heiyu, and Hong Lian from the Saint artifact. The 3 of them did not need an explanation from Jian Shen. They understood the situation just from a single glance. Rui Jin said, "Let us deal with the trouble here." Rui Jin gazed past the many beasts and locked onto the 2-meter-long, tiger-like beast in the distance. His eyes began to shine with interest and the sacred dragon's sword and sacred dragon's armor appeared at the same time. He equipped the armor and charged at the Class 9 feral beast with the sword. At the same time, Heiyu donned his origin energy armor. He drew his machete and split the 9th heavenly layer feral beast Jian Shen was fighting into 2. Weapons with origin energy were just far too powerful. Just a single strike was life-threatening, so the beast immediately met its end. It could not even resist. Flames roared around Hong Lian. She was like a goddess of flames as the terrifying fire seemed to be able to scorch the air. The flames caused the surrounding temperature to skyrocket and many of the beasts became extremely fearful of her flames. Hong Lian did not take part in the battle and instead stood beside Jian Shen, glaring at the surrounding beasts. Her strength had been greatly reduced, but she was still able to frighten away the beasts. A thought pulsed from the azulate sword spirits as they gathered around a multicolored rock in Jian Shen's sea of consciousness. No wonder I felt that the presence of the 4 metal swords was rather familiar, so it turns out that they practiced the famed technique of the Nirvanic Immortal Exalt, the Nirvanic sword formation. The Nirvanic Immortal Exalt was one of the 5 grand exalts. He had reached the same level of cultivation as former master, having reached the utmost extremes in terms of strength. It's a pity he died to the grand prime of the warring gods in the end. In that battle back then, the Nirvanic immortal Exalt fell first. His 4 swords shattered and their sword spirits dispersed. Afterward, our original swords shattered as well. We managed to survive in the end and were born from Yin-Yang Qi and are blessed by the world, but our vitality was greatly weakened as well. The Nirvanic immortal Exalt always moved by himself. He never had a disciple, so it's fortunate that his famed technique was not lost after his death. Though, it's a pity that the 4 of them haven't seemed to obtain the full cultivation method and their swords are too low quality. Otherwise, the force of the Nirvanic sword formation would never have been so puny. Chapter 1132. The third layer of formations. Jian Chen did not hear the discussion between the sword spirits. He had placed all his attention on Rui Jin, He Yu, and Hong Lian. Even Saint Emperors would struggle to injure He Yu and Rui Jin once they had equipped their origin energy armor. Their origin energy weapons allowed them to use attacks on the level of Saint Emperors, so their battle prowess was extremely frightening. They were basically 2 real Saint Emperors. Rui Jin fought the Class 9 feral beast all by himself. Their fight was devastating as terrifying energy rammed into the formations on their sides, but the formations only trembled slightly and did not break. What was even more unbelievable was that their fight actually failed to cause any damage to the ground. The invisible energy that protected the land was just far too incredible. The Class 9 feral beast had awakened intelligence long ago. It had grasped Saint Emperor abilities after many years of cultivation, so it was very powerful. It was equally matched with Rui Jin, but it feared Rui Jin's sacred dragon sword very much. It always dodged and never dared to take it head-on. Origin energy was a type of energy at a whole different level. It was far more powerful than the energy of Saint Emperors, so it would pose great harm to Saint Emperors. When the Path Lord of Carnal Desires and the 2 Saint Emperors of the Beast God continent clashed with Rui Jin and He Yu, none of them dared to take the origin energy attacks head-on. That origin energy was something that Saint Emperors feared very much. He Yu charged at the beasts with his machete and started a massacre. The strongest beasts only possessed a similar level of cultivation as him, but He Yu was a mutated divine alligator. He possessed a battle prowess far greater than beasts of the same level. Coupled with his origin energy weapon, he was even stronger. Even when caught in an encirclement of beasts, he did not fall to a disadvantage at all. He instead continued to kill them one by one. In just a few seconds, over 10 beasts had died to He Yu's hands. This included 2 at the great perfection of Saint King. Fear filled the eyes of the remaining beasts when they saw how powerful He Yu was. They wanted to run away. Among them were 3 other beasts at great perfection as well, but they did not become involved with the battle. They retreated out of the formation after understanding the situation in front of them. They had already become utterly terrified by He Yu's battle prowess and had lost all courage to fight. In the end, a few more beasts died and the remaining ones retreated out of the formation. They had learned how to get out quite some time ago. Without an opponent, He Yu glanced at the Class 9 feral beast that fought Rui Jin. A vicious light flickered through his eyes. The Class 9 feral beast's heart skipped a beat when he saw this. A thought immediately pulsed from it: outsiders, you are very powerful. I will leave and let you have this territory. With that, the Class 9 feral beast no longer bothered with Rui Jin. It leaped through the formation. Class 9 feral beasts were equivalent to Saint Emperors. They were not easy to kill, and if they wanted to leave, even Rui Jin and He Yu were not enough to stop them. In the end, the first region between the formations was reduced to a ground full of 16th star feral beasts where blood dyed the ground. Jian Shen checked through their corpses and found by surprise that they all possessed thunderstones. Even the weakest thunderstones were at the 7th heavenly layer, and there were even 2 at the great perfection of Saint King. Senior Rui Jin, Senior He Yu, Senior Hong Lian, can you help me fill up these thunderstones with energy when you have the time? Jian Shen collected all the thunderstones and passed them all to the 3 of them along with his 15th star thunderstones in his space ring. The thunderstones required an expert that was just as strong or stronger than the beast it came from to input energy, and only then could they become quaking thunders. Otherwise, nothing would happen at all. The three of them split the thunderstones into 3 portions. It was a simple matter to them. Jian-Chen, where is this place? Is it the death nest? He Yu looked around and asked. No, this is a zone of danger in the sea realm, the divine realm. Jian-Chen explained. Suddenly, streaks of light began to shine from Ruo Jin's eyes. He examined the formations without even blinking. As he slowly glanced around, 2 layers of formations hidden in space slowly appeared. The formations here are very powerful and very profound, Ruo Jin said after a while. He was very stern. Now that the threat of the beasts had been resolved, Jian-Chen placed his focus on the divine water of the world and the formations again. He then let the white tiger out of the artifact space and continued to attempt to pass through the formations with the white tiger. But, to Jian-Chen's disappointment, the formations here were extraordinary. The white tiger's innate ability was actually ineffective against these formations. It's a pity that Ada and them aren't here. They've studied formations quite extensively, so if they were here, we could find a way again very quickly, Jian-Chen gently sighed. He had come across quite a few formations in his life, but he had broken through all of them through brute strength. He had never studied them, so he had no foundation in the aspect of formations. I've tried earlier and found that these formations can completely withstand a full-powered attack from me. It's impossible to break through them forcefully, He Yu said as well. He was extremely stern. He had only come across formations so powerful once before, and that was in the Bright Moon Divine Hall. Let me try. Ruo Jin called out. He swung the sword in his hands and struck the formation as hard as he could. However, the formation only shook slightly after being hit by his attack that was on par with the Saint Emperor. He could not break through it. Ruo Jin refused to believe this outcome and swung his sword several more times. He struck both the first and second layer of formations, but the outcome was still the same. The toughness of the formations could be described as heaven-defying. Strength at the level of Saint Emperors was not enough to break through them forcefully. The formations have been struck by attacks from the beasts during the instability, so they've undergone some minute changes. The way in before has become useless now, or I could have tried using Ada's special sequence of footsteps that had brought us in the first place. Looks like we're now just stuck here and need to slowly study the formation, Jian-Chen helplessly said. They could do nothing about the formations present here. 3 steps diagonally left, 9 steps diagonally right, 5 steps left, 2 steps back, 4 steps diagonally right. Suddenly, a voice rang out in Jian-Chen's head. Ziying remained quiet for some time before speaking. Ziying, is this the way into the formation? Jian-Chen asked in surprise and joy. Master, this is one of the many ways into this formation. This formation may be extraordinary, but it is not one of the best. It is not a problem for us, said Ziying. Master, Ziying and I know quite a lot of things. We may just be sword spirits, but we have existed for a very long time after all. We can find a way through most formations, but not all formations have a method to get through them. There are many killing formations that have no way out. If Master comes across a formation like this, we will be no help. Qing Suo's pleasant voice rang out. It was filled with pride. Jian-Chen followed the special sequence that Ziying told him. He finally made his way into the second region without any obstructions, while Ruo Jin and the others did not return to the artifact space either. They followed Jian-Chen to the second region. The white tiger stayed out as well. It shrank to the size of a cat and quietly sat on Jian-Chen's shoulder. The light in its eyes flickered as it looked around curiously, but its gaze stopped many times on the formations. It would produce a deep growl from time to time, appearing to be rather irritated. It felt unhappy with what happened earlier. Clearly, the white tiger took the fact that it was unable to pass through the formations to heart. The second region was very safe. There were no beasts there, and Jian-Chen was even closer to the spirit sea after arriving there, such that he could see the lake that glowed with water several kilometers away. Master, you need to attack the 18 crucial points of the formation to get through it. They need to be destroyed at the same time and a passage through the formation will rip open. This passage closes up very fast, so you need to pass through it as quickly as you can. Ziying saw through the secrets of the formations very soon and told Jian Chen how to get past it. That's easy. I can instantly send out 18 sword chi, said Jian Chen. He was proficient with using the sword fast, so this was nothing difficult to him. Master, it won't be enough with your power. You need attacks at the level of Saint Emperors to destroy these crucial points, Ziying followed up. What? It needs to be at the level of Saint Emperors? Jian Chen was shocked. He had never come across such a powerful formation where only Saint Emperors could enter. Master, from my observations, the power of the formation does not seem to be at its maximum. Otherwise, the 18 crucial points would have been even tougher, and even attacks at Saint Emperor wouldn't have been enough. The power of this formation completely exceeds this world. It shouldn't have appeared here in the first place, said Qing Suo. Was this formation cast down by someone in the origin realm? Jian Chen was secretly shocked. The first person he thought of was the sea goddess. Afterward, Jian Chen told Rui Jin and the other two how to get past the formation. He needed to rely on them for attacks at the level of Saint Emperors. My strength has been greatly reduced right now. I can't use the full force of the scorching Godfire hairpin, so I won't be able to attack a crucial point, Hong Lian emotionlessly replied. There are many secret techniques I know that can send out 18 attacks at the same time, but I can only use the sacred dragon sword to reach the might of Saint Emperors. It's impossible for me to attack that many times in so little time, Rui Jin frowned. He Yu remained silent for a while before saying, I can only deal 4 attacks at the same time. I can deal 6 attacks. There are 8 points left. Rui Jin stood with his arms crossed as he sternly stared at the formation ahead. At this moment, an idea appeared in Jian Chen's head. He immediately pulled out the divine water of the world he had just obtained and passed it to Hong Lian. He said, Senior Hong Lian, this water can help you recover your strength. Ingest it now. Once your strength recovers, we'll have a much better chance at getting through the formation. Hong Lian accepted the divine water of the world and glanced at Jian Chen in suspicion. She drank a small mouthful of it with some doubt, but her face became filled with obvious joy the next moment. This stuff really can help me recover my strength. It can cure the backlash from using the rebirth of flames for scorching divine phoenixes, but there's just far too little. It can't return my strength to my peak, probably to the 8th heavenly layer at most. I might only be able to attack 3 points. Jian Chen slightly frowned. He still possessed some more divine water, which was the portion he had bought with a vast quantity of crystal coins from the auction. However, he had prepared it to forge the azulate swords, and there was even less than what he had just obtained. Even if Hong Lian ingested it, she might not be able to benefit from it. It was not enough to recover another level of cultivation's worth of strength. After pondering a while, Jian Chen did not use the other divine water he had on him. He said rather painfully, looks like we can only use the quaking thunders to blow up the 5 other points. It's fortunate that I have quite a few of them on me. If you place a few together in one point, it should be at the level of Saint Emperors. We only need to arrange these quaking thunders in 5 locations. Chapter 1133, Several hundred liters of divine water, quickly recover your strength Hong Lian. Hey you and I will use this time to fill the thunderstones with energy, said Rui Jin. He then sat down where he was with Hey Yu. He began to pour energy into the thunderstones. Hong Lian ingested all of the divine water in one mouthful before sitting down far away. Immediately, scarlet flames erupted from her and enveloped the area around her. The surrounding temperature quickly began to rise. The flames around Hong Lian burned more and more intense. They grew hotter and hotter. Her presence continuously increased. She was currently making a recovery. Jianshen sat down on the ground far away from Hong Lian. He then pulled out the great divination technique from his space ring to continue his comprehensions. Jianshen was very interested in the great divination technique's ability to forecast the future and reveal the truths of the world. He had wanted to grasp the secret technique for quite some time already, but it was extremely difficult to gain a grasp of the foundation, which was why he had always remained stuck. Jianshen entered a special state very quickly. He devoted all his attention to the wondrous state of comprehending the great divination technique. He had forgotten about himself, about time, and about everything else in that moment. His mind entered a simple state of semi-consciousness. Jianshen's mind seemed to have arrived in a vast universe. He stood in cold, dark space as stars littered his surroundings. They moved about silently in a profound trajectory. Jianshen seemed to have seen the birth of the universe and the chaotic age where everything came into existence. He saw laws slowly form, one after another, filling up the entire universe. At that moment, Jianshen seemed to have understood something, but it was hazy, dreamlike, and unrealistic. He could not grasp it even though he wanted to. Jianshen completely isolated him from the flow of time. He stayed in that state for a long amount of time, even he himself did not know how long. Finally, a call rang out from the depths of his soul, jerking him awake. He had exited the state at that moment. Master, Rui Jin and the other two have finished their preparations. It was the artifact spirit's voice. Jianshen had ordered the artifact spirit to immediately wake him up if something happened. Jianshen quietly put away the great divination technique. He knew it was extremely difficult to comprehend the great divination technique. Grasping the basics would not be easy. To one side, Rui Jin, Heiyu, and Hong Lian stood side by side as they calmly gazed at Jianshen. A pile of fist-sized quaking thunders had been placed near their feet as violent and extremely unstable energy pulsed from them. The pulsing actually managed to disturb the surrounding energy of the world. Jianshen stood up. After talking a little, he learned that he had actually sat there for a month already, which made him sigh inside about how cultivation really was timeless. Hong Lian had already recovered to the 8th heavenly layer after ingesting the divine water of the world. Her battle prowess had increased by quite a lot. Afterward, Jianshen told the three of them where the 18 crucial points were. He split 13 of them between Rui Jin, Heiyu, and Hong Lian, before picking up the large pile of quaking thunders and leaving an imprint of his soul on them. This was for igniting the quaking thunders. All of them finished their preparations very quickly. Rui Jin, Heiyu, and Hong Lian all drew their origin energy weapons. With an order from Jianshen, they began to attack the crucial points as hard as they could in unison. They struck out multiple times in a single moment with attacks on the level of Saint Emperors. At the same time, the quaking thunders turned into balls of light with a thought from Jianshen. Close to 30 quaking thunders simultaneously flew out in organized groups under Jianshen's control. They flew to the 5 remaining points before exploding with deafening booms. Each cluster was as powerful as an attack from a Saint Emperor, so the 5 points were obliterated at the same time. The 18 points were destroyed at the same time with Jianshen, Rui Jin, Hong Lian, and Heiyu's efforts. The destruction of the points caused the final layer of formations to pulse in an unstable fashion and a meter-wide passage gradually ripped open. It was very unstable. Jianshen's eyes narrowed. Without any hesitation, he immediately charged toward the passage with the 3 others. The white tiger remained on Jianshen's shoulder, clinging to a strand of Jianshen's hair with its little paws. The passage remained for a very short amount of time, closing up again in just a few seconds. The pulsing formation calmed down very quickly again, and they had successfully made their way through it, reaching the last region. This formation is just far too powerful. Even this is not enough to destroy it. Heiyu could not help but sigh in amazement as he stood by the last layer of formations. Jianshen stared fixedly at the lake that sprayed water. His eyes blazed with interest. After many setbacks, his heart's desire had finally come true, and he had found the source of the divine water. At that moment, both Hong Lian's problem with strength and the difficulties the elite flame mercenaries faced while reaching Saint Ruler could readily be solved. They were no longer problems. Jian Chen slowly walked toward the spirit sea excitedly. As he drew near, a heavy fragrance hit his nose. Many special plants and weird flowers grew around the lake. They were very extraordinary. Their smell possessed the special effect of calming people down. It was even effective to people at Jian Chen's level. A geyser formed at the center of the lake as it launched water into the air. The water was extremely pure and filled with spirituality, vastly different from regular lake water. Thumb-sized droplets of divine water existed within the normal water. Although they were together, the two did not mix. A portion of the divine water hovered on the lake's surface before falling back into it. Only the tiny portion that remained atop the lake mysteriously disappeared. This was the source of the divine water of the world. All the divine water in the divine realm drifted out from here. With a plunk, Jian Chen jumped into the lake. He swam to the center and paid no attention to the small amount that sank down. Not much time passed before Jian Chen arrived in the center of the lake. A meter-wide pit existed there, and it was filled with divine water of the world. There was an extremely great amount, at least several hundred liters. The thumb-sized amount Jian Chen had spent a lot of effort to obtain earlier was like an ant next to an elephant. The divine water of the world that was shooting out of the geyser and sinking to the bottom of the lake gathered at the pit from all directions. This was like the den for divine water, able to suck over all the dispersed water. Jian Chen could not help but gulp down a huge mouthful of the water. A wonderful feeling immediately invaded his soul. At that moment, Jian Chen could feel his soul sublimating. It filled him with an indescribably great feeling, as if he was treading on air. The effects of the divine water were extremely wondrous and powerful. Although it was less effective to Saint Kings than Saint Rulers, Saint Kings could still benefit from it. It was only a matter of quantity. The mouthful of water Jian Chen had drank was equivalent to several thousand years or even over 10,000 years worth of water from the divine realm. After a very long while, Jian Chen finally recovered from the wonderful feeling. He did not feel his strength increase in the slightest, but his soul was clearly much more refined now. The effects of the divine water were not great on experts that had reached a certain level of power, but it was a high-quality beverage. Jian Chen hurriedly pulled out a huge gourd from his space ring and began to collect the water. The divine water in the small pit was rapidly pulled up as a suction force appeared from the gourd. Jian Chen stopped after collecting several hundred liters. At that moment, the remaining divine water sat at the bottom of the pit. There was not much left. Jian Chen sealed up the gourd and weighed the hefty gourd. Only then did he leave satisfied, returning back to the shore. Rui Jin, He Yu, and Hong Lian stood silently on the shore as they watched Jian Chen. They did not go down to drink the water since it was useless to them even with the water's wonders. It was only somewhat useful to Hong Lian. Jian Chen, give me 25 liters of the water. This water is very useful to me, Hong Lian asked Jian Chen as he arrived before the three of them with the gourd. Without saying anything else, Jian Chen immediately pulled out a palm-sized jade bottle from his space ring. He extravagantly set aside 50 liters for Hong Lian. He had over 400 liters in the gourd, so even if he gave Hong Lian 50 liters, the remaining amount was still enough to support the flame mercenaries for at least 100,000 years. It could ensure that experts appeared continuously for the flame mercenaries. Even with Hong Lian's mental fortitude, she could not help but become slightly overjoyed after obtaining 50 liters of divine water. She said, "Let me return to the artifact space. I want to recover my strength as soon as possible. I just happen to want to enter the artifact space as well and check on the group of elites." Jian Chen immediately pulled out the saint artifact and entered with Hong Lian. Rui Jin and He Yu remained outside, watching over and protecting the saint artifact. Jian Chen appeared in a grand hall within the artifact space. He boldly walked over to the throne and casually sat down. Hong Lian went to her own dwelling to go into seclusion, planning on ingesting the water and returning to her peak condition. Is the artifact spirit present? Jian Shen called out in the empty hall from the throne. This one is present. May I ask for master's orders? The artifact spirit appeared beside Jian Shen and asked courteously. Bring me the group of people I've left in here. I want to see them immediately, ordered Jian Shen. Chapter 1134, The Hidden Power of the Flame Mercenaries. Yes, Master. The artifact spirit courteously replied. With a wave of his hand, the space within the artifact immediately began to surge. Powerful energy rippled through the entire place, alerting all the magical beasts. This was the power of the artifact space. As the spirit of the saint artifact, the artifact spirit was like a god in there. He could control everything at will. A few burly men clothed in magical beast fur or with bare chests were scattered throughout the space, fighting the native magical beasts. They either moved about by themselves or traveled in small groups. These people had undergone a baptism of blood and tests of life or death to become iron-willed warriors. Each and every single one of them radiated with an abnormally bold presence, coupled with the smell of blood. This presence could only exist because all of them had stepped over countless corpses of magical beasts to stand there. All of them knew powerful battle skills, and their strength was almost unrivaled. At this moment, the surrounding weather began to surge. A mysterious and vast energy filled the skies, sucking away all these people who were dispersed throughout the space. Jian Shen sat emotionlessly on the throne within the central, majestic hall. Below him, several dozen burly men with the smell of blood suddenly appeared. We greet the captain. The people all knelt down and thunderously yelled out. They were not very surprised when they suddenly appeared there since they had experienced this more than once in the past. Jian Shen could not help but faintly smile when he saw each and every one of them radiating with fighting spirit and bold presences. He gently said, "Rise, everyone." "Yes, Captain." All the people clearly replied in unison, their voices echoing in the surroundings. They all stood up at the same time, looking at the young man who sat above with excitement or calmness. Jian Shen slowly glanced over the people and said, "Impressive, impressive. Your strength has rapidly increased over these years. My hopes were not wasted. Kai Er, report the exact details of the group." "Yes, Captain," the person who stood at the very front politely responded. He paused slightly to collect his thoughts and continued, "Captain, there are a total of 66 people in this group. With the support of heavenly resources and large quantities of monster cores over the past few years, all of us have become Heaven's Saint Masters and 12 of us have reached the 6th cycle." "Good, well done." Jian Shen was extremely satisfied. These people had cultivated at an extremely fast rate. Over the past few decades, all of them who had been Saint Masters or Great Saint Masters had finally reached Heaven's Saint Master. This was a speed that few could rival on the Tianyuan continent. However, this was all because Jian Shen had poured a large quantity of resources into them. He had supplied them with various battle skills, monster cores, money, heavenly resources, and high-quality cultivation methods. They could be described as having enjoyed treatment that only the scions of large clans could enjoy, which was why they possessed their current glorious achievements. Afterward, Jian Shen pulled out the serpent dragon blood he had obtained from the mountains of the sleeping dragon. He said, "This is the blood from a 9th heavenly layer Saint King's serpent dragon. Kai Er, store the blood in a few wooden tubs so that everyone can bathe in it. It will allow the toughness of your bodies to reach another level." "Yes, Captain," Kai Er rejoiced. He knew extremely well just how much blood like that was worth, so he immediately and carefully put it away. Afterward, he left with a few people. He returned soon after with a few large tubs that had just been made from felled wood. He then poured the blood into the wooden tubs, taking turns with everyone else to enter the bath of blood. A violent energy and a portion of the serpent dragon's essence was hidden within the blood. It was obviously nothing to experts like Jian Shen, but to these people who were only Heaven's Saint Masters, there were extremely great effects. Several burly men immediately felt extreme pain all over when they entered the bath. It was so painful that they began to perspire. However, every single one of them clenched their teeth and did not even make a sound. Jian Shen did not stay here for them to finish their baths. He passed a huge hunk of serpent dragon meat and some divine water of the world to Kai Air. After talking over some matters with them, he left the artifact space. Jian Shen no longer worried about the problem that some of them could not reach Saint Ruler now that he had the divine water. He anticipated the day when several dozen Saint Rulers would appear in the Flame Mercenaries in the near future. This was the power that belonged to the Flame Mercenaries. They were experts he had raised personally, so he didn't need to question their loyalty. They were way different than the foreign Saint Rulers that had joined them. Jian Shen reappeared by the shore of the Spirit Sea. After putting away the Saint artifact, he constantly looked around and asked, Ziying, Qing Sua, how do we get out of here? Master, someone has set up a few things here in the past. There are 2 transportation formations hidden here. One of them seems to target the holy water of the Spirit Sea while the other is made for the entry and exit of people. All you need to do is fly past a certain altitude and you'll be sent away by the spatial energy. However, before you leave, you should collect some of the water from the Spirit Sea and the spiritual mud at the bottom of the lake. These items are extraordinary and are filled with spirituality. They may not be materials for forging the azulate swords, but they can increase the quality of the 4 people's weapons, Ziying explained. Jian Shen became slightly stupefied when he heard that. He began to doubt what he had just heard. He asked, Ziying, you're actually considering other people? This is groundbreaking. Just who are the 4 of them that have caught your eye? Ziying pondered silently. He then said, Master, there's a few matters we can't tell you about too early. You will learn what you need to know later. Jian Shen did not pester the sword spirits. He knew they were looking out for him with everything they did. Afterward, Jian Shen pulled out another large gourd and collected some of the water and spiritual mud. Afterward, he took to the sky with Rui Jin and He Yu, triggering the transportation formation hidden in the space. All 3 of them disappeared. They discovered that they had returned to the depths of the divine realm when they reappeared. They had all been sent there randomly. There was no longer anything Jian Shen needed from the divine realm after obtaining the divine water of the world. He quickly flew toward the outskirts. The White Tiger, Rui Jin, and He Yu had all returned to the artifact space. 2 days later, Jian Shen arrived at the edge of the soaring ant's territory according to his memory. He stood there and gazed at the region, but he turned back into a blur after just a few seconds. He disappeared into the distance in a flash. Chapter 1135, Xia Wang's departure. Jian Shen left the Divine Realm and returned to Divine City 100 kilometers away. Virtually the moment he stepped into the city, he heard many people discussing Lan Mo's death in the Divine Realm. Lan Mo had already been dead for over a month, but the news of his death had just reached the Divine City. This was why there was such a great hubbub over it. Almost everyone in the city was talking about it. The Lanshan clan did not make an overwhelming response to his death. The entire clan was enveloped by deep sorrow and was currently holding a grand funeral for him. The experts of the 100-footed clan had only come out of the Divine Realm a few days ago. When they passed through the Lanshan clan, they informed the patriarch of a few things that had happened. They told the patriarch that his son had died to an extremely powerful 16th star expert. Thus, the patriarch could not even consider revenge. Jian Shen's presence was finally no longer restrained now that he had left the Divine Realm. He immediately expanded it to envelope the entire city. He did not find Zhou Chuyun or the others. He was not sure whether they had quietly left the city already or that they had never returned from the Divine Realm. At this moment, Jian Shen's face changed. He drew back his presence and softly mumbled, "They really are here." With that, Jian Shen flew off before descending in front of a luxurious inn. At the same time, 4 closed windows suddenly opened. 4 old men drifted out of their rooms and hovered in front of Jian Shen. Yang Yutian, our miscalculations were why we couldn't pass through the second layer of formations, but the four of us still intend to try again in 100 years. I do hope you can come with us, Ada calmly said. He was not shocked at all by the fact that Jianchen had made it out of there alive. Jianchen shook his head and gently smiled. I might not be going anywhere with you four in the future because there isn't anything I need from here now. I've come to find you this time because I want to give some things to you. With that, Jianchen pulled out a big gourd from his space ring and tossed it to Ada. Ada caught the gourd and suspiciously glanced at Jianchen. He was filled with curiosity and doubt, having no clue as to what was inside the gourd. However, he immediately jolted when he discovered what was in the gourd. He was filled with disbelief, and he involuntarily cried out, This. Yang Yutian, why, you actually made it in there. The three other old men also became extremely curious when they saw their brother lose composure. They took the gourd from Ada and peeked into it, but they ended up exactly the same as Ada. Disbelief filled all their eyes. They originally thought that Jianchen had fled using a secret technique just like them. Never did they think that Jianchen had actually managed to get past so many beasts and arrive in the central region, shocking them greatly. This is what you need, right? Jianchen stood with his arms crossed as he looked at them with a vague smile. The four of them all sucked in a deep breath and calmed down very quickly. One of them said, correct, these two items are extremely useful to us. It was also the reason why we wanted to enter there. Yang Yutian, the four of us owe you a favor. Jianchen conversed a little more with four brothers before leaving Divine City. He returned to the Turtle clan soon after that and asked about the current situation of the clan. Ruler, with Senior Qi Nishuan present in our clan, we have strengthened by quite a lot. We have also attempted to take back a few crystal mines that are still in the possession of others, but we did not succeed at all. All the remaining large organizations have joined together, and they have connections with the Tao family. As soon as the experts of our clan are mobilized, they will gather the experts from several clans to defend. There was nothing we could do, a Saint Ruler elder said on his knees. His voice was filled with helplessness and a sense of being wronged. Jianchen frowned slightly. This Tao family really is obstinate. Looks like they've already made up their minds to oppose us. Please take charge of the overall situation, ruler, and lead us gloriously, the elder courteously requested. After a momentary pause, Jianchen said, we'll let them enjoy themselves for now. I have even more important matters to attend to. They cannot be delayed. However, the end of the Tao family will come the next time I return. Jianchen really did feel rather hurried inside. He had no idea exactly when the saint's fruit would ripen, so he needed to head over as soon as possible. Otherwise, he would lose a good opportunity to obtain it. This was because he had learned from the sea goddess that a vicious battle would erupt every single time the fruit appeared. When the time arrived, probably all 10 protector clans would take part in the fight for it. This was because no one would ever give up so easily on the only way to reach Saint Emperor. It possessed a fatal enticement to all people. Jianchen, if we don't move against the Tao family now, they'll become even more difficult to deal with in the future. We've received information recently that the Tao family is going to be united with another peak-level clan through marriage. Dealing with the two of them will be extremely difficult. Qi Nishuan walked in from outside and stared at Jianchen. That's not a problem. Let them marry each other. Even if the marriage is a success, it won't be able to change anything, Jianchen said at ease. He seemed to be very confident. Qi Nishuan frowned slightly, as if she disliked Jianchen's arrogance. She said, the Tao family belongs to the territory of the Sea Goddess Hall. I know your status in the Sea Goddess Hall is rather special, but the hall will not provide you with any support if you want to deal with the Tao family. I know you're very strong, but the Tao family is even stronger. They are no weaker than you. I really do wonder where your confidence comes from. Jianchen began to laugh. He looked down at Qi Nishuan from the throne high up and said, Qi Nishuan, you don't need to worry about this. I have my plans. Qin Yishuan could not stand Jian Chen's condescending attitude. She coldly snorted before leaving. At the same time, she said, "There's something you should know. You're not the only one with a divine hull. The Tao family has one too." "A divine hull," Jianshan murmured as the light in his eyes flickered. He gently sighed inside before dismissing the elder that knelt below. He pulled out the saint artifact and let out Xia Wang, who had always been cultivating in it. After letting him out, he passed on a portion of divine water of the world and said, "Xia Wang, this was for the deal we made before. Take the divine water of the world, and from now on, you have recovered your freedom. You are no longer bound to me." Xia Wang behaved in a straightforward manner, taking the divine water without holding back. He said, "Although I can break through to the 15th star using the cultivation method of the Octaterra Emperor, it'll take quite a long time. It'll be different with the water. It can shorten the amount of time I need to break through. Jianshan, I'll give you back the cultivation method. I owe you a huge favor, and I'll return it to you after I strengthen up." Xia Wang left, disappearing in the vast sea realm with the divine water he had obtained from Jianshan. The environment there was more suitable for his cultivation. Chapter 1136, A Gift. Jianshan sat on the throne all by himself within the majestic hall. It was silent in there. Jianshan sat there lazily. With a flip of his hand, a simple book appeared in it. It was covered with the marks of time, clearly having existed for quite some time already. It's a pity that only members of the sea race can practice the cultivation method of the Octaterra Emperor. Otherwise, I could have added another great cultivation method to the collections of the flame mercenaries, Jianshan mumbled as he looked at the cultivation method. His voice was filled with pity. "Octaterra Emperor, I obtained your divine hull and I found a successor for you, so your cultivation method will not be lost. This can be counted as a form of compensation," Jianshan murmured to himself. He did not let Xia Wang take the cultivation method away with him, but he believed that Xia Wang had already memorized the contents. The cultivation methods from the sea realm were unsuitable for humans and magical beasts. He had originally obtained a Tian-level saint technique that was equivalent to the saint-tier battle skills on the Tian-Yuan continent and the Octaterra Emperor's cultivation method from the Divine Hall. Nubis had taken the Tian-level saint technique and wanted to modify it into his own battle skill. He was still working hard on it today. Jianshan could only hand the cultivation method to Xia Wang. Only members of the sea race could practice it, and he knew very few people in the sea realm. Xia Wang was undoubtedly one of the best choices. It's a pity that the members of the Turtle clan are limited by their original form. The cultivation methods that suit them the most are those that strengthen the body. The Octaterra Emperor's cultivation method is not suitable for them since they have better methods to use, Jianshan mumbled. He did not want a cultivation method left behind by a saint emperor be forgotten just like this. He wanted to find even more outstanding successors for the cultivation method, and just Xia Wang by himself was not enough. Suddenly, Jianshan's eyes lit up. He stood up from the throne and said, "I might be able to find someone who's suitable." "Someone come." Jianshan immediately summoned an elder of the Turtle clan. After asking him about a few things, he departed from the Turtle clan. There was a large tribe several 100,000 kilometers away from the Turtle clan. There were several 100,000 people who lived there, and it was rumored to have a 15th star expert. It was renowned throughout the surrounding radius of several tens of thousand kilometers, and they held supreme power in that small region. The tribe was called the Kaler tribe. It was rumored that the founding expert shared the same name as the tribe, and those surnamed Kai were part of the leading family of the tribe. Several Earth Saint Master guards stood straight-backed under the leadership of a Heaven Saint Master outside. They silently guarded the main entrance of the tribe. At this moment, a streak of light flashed by. A person had shot over from the distance with extremely great speed, arriving there in just a few seconds. The person was so fast that the guards could not react. The person turned out to be a very handsome young man who seemed to be in his 20s and wore blue a robe. He had erased his presence and none of it leaked out, so he seemed just like an ordinary person. The guards outside the entrance all became surprised. The young man did not give off any presence, but just the speed he had traveled at was something that other ordinary experts could not match. Esteemed warrior, I, Shak, captain of the 2nd unit of the Kaler tribe, would like to express the most sincere welcome to you. Is there anywhere I can help you with? The Heaven Saint Master arrived before Jian Chen with his head lowered. He spoke politely. Is Kaya a member of your tribe? The young man asked nonchalantly. Esteemed warrior, Kaya is the young lady of our tribe, responded Shak. I want to see your young lady. Please pass on the message, said the Jian Chen. With that, Shak became slightly troubled. He carefully inquired, may I ask how you would like to be referred to? I'll pass on the message right now. The ruler of the Turtle Clan, replied Jian Chen. What? You're the ruler of the Turtle Clan? Shak paled in fright. He stared at Jian Chen in disbelief. Recently, the Turtle Clan had become extremely well known in the territory of the Sea Goddess Hall. It was rumored that an impressive ruler had appeared in the clan. He had first subdued the Taihong clan and then made the 3 disciplinary elders of the Heaven Spirit Hall submit to him. He caused the Turtle Clan's strength to skyrocket, allowing them to regain their former glory. Also, the Turtle Clan had been waging battles everywhere recently. They took over a lot of crystal mines using absolute power, forcing many large clans to work together with the Tao family just so they could contend with the Turtle Clan. It shook up the entire territory. Although very few people had seen the mysterious ruler of the Turtle Clan, he had already become an expert that had shaken up the entire sea realm. Shak never would have believed that the ordinary young man right before him was the legendary ruler of the Turtle Clan. Ruler, please wait. I'll go pass on the message immediately. Shak returned to his senses and responded with a trembling voice. Afterward, he ran inside as fast as he could. Jian Chen did not follow him and instead silently waited there. Otherwise, he probably would have caused quite a disturbance in the Kaler tribe. Kaya currently sat opposite of a middle-aged man with refined facial features in an extremely well-adorned room. They spoke freely. The middle-aged man was Kaya's father as well as the current patriarch of the Kaler tribe. He possessed a great status. At this moment, an old man hurried into the room. He hastily said, Patriarch, someone has reported that the ruler of the Turtle Clan has come to our tribe. He's currently at the main entrance. What? The ruler of the Turtle Clan? Elder Zhou, are you sure you've heard correctly? The patriarch immediately stood up as shock filled his face. Mentioning the mysterious ruler of the Turtle Clan, who had only appeared recently, was like thunder to his ears. It was reported by someone below. Patriarch, we better go check on whether it's true or not. Just in case it's true, Elder Zhou hurriedly replied. He was afraid that they would offend the ruler by making him wait too long. Why would the ruler of the Turtle Clan come to our Kaler tribe? The patriarch was filled with suspicion as he quickly walked away. The patriarch hurriedly arrived at the main entrance with a great group of elders behind him. They saw Jian Chen standing there in the distance, and Kaya, who was beside the patriarch, jerked. Her gaze was filled with astonishment as she subconsciously cried out, It's actually you, warrior. Kaya, do you recognize this person? Is he really the ruler of the Turtle Clan? The patriarch asked through a communication technique. Kaya did not respond since she did not know Jian Chen's true identity either. At this moment, the group of people from the Kaler tribe had arrived before Jian Chen. All of them curiously observed and examined him, but Jian Chen kept his presence hidden, so none of them could see his strength. The patriarch immediately clasped his hands. I am the patriarch of the Kaler tribe. May I ask how I may refer to you? I am the ruler of the Turtle Clan, Jian Chen. I've actually come this time primarily to find Miss Kaya, replied Jian Chen. After speaking, he waved his hand before anyone could say anything else. A mysterious power immediately wrapped around Kaya, and he flew away with her. The sudden actions caused everyone to become stunned. No one had thought that Jian Shen would actually take Kaya away in such a straightforward fashion. However, Jian Shen was just too fast, so none of them could catch up even if they tried. So is he the ruler of the Turtle Clan or not? Why has he taken away Kaya? The patriarch wondered aloud. He was filled with worry. One of the old men remained silent for a while before walking over from behind. He said, "Patriarch, I recognize this person. When Miss Kaya and the others suffered in an ambush with me outside Jia City, he was the one who helped us and saved our lives. He shouldn't do anything detrimental to the young lady." Jian Shen stood with his arms crossed on a steep mountain peak 1,000 kilometers away from the Kaler tribe. He gazed at the vast expanse in front of him. Kaya stood behind him as her dress and hair were buffeted by the wind. She stared at Jian Shen's back with her bright and intelligent eyes. She was strewn between emotions. "Sir, I never thought you would be the renowned ruler of the Turtle Clan," Kaya said rather bitterly. She understood what the identity meant very well. She had never thought Jian Shen's background would actually be so impressive. Jian Shen did not have much to say now that he had met Kaya again. The two of them had only met by chance originally. Jian Shen turned around and a book appeared in his hand. He said to her, "Miss Kaya, this is the cultivation method of the Octoterra Emperor. It's a pity that it does not suit my clansmen, and I don't know many people in the sea realm either. You're probably one of the few I do know, so I want to gift this cultivation method to you. Are you willing to practice it? So you've come to find me this time just to give me this cultivation method?" Kaya remained abnormally calm. She did not become shocked because of the cultivation method. Jian Shen nodded and said nothing else. Kaya slowly extended her hand and accepted the cultivation method from Jian Shen. She gently said, "Thank you, ruler. Don't thank me, because this cultivation method is completely useless when it's with me, which is why I might as well give it to someone who needs it." "Kaya, I hope I will see a second Octoterra Emperor in the future," Jian Shen nonchalantly replied before disappearing into the distance as a streak of light. Kaya held the cultivation method in her right hand. She stared deeply in the direction Jian Shen had vanished and only left after quite some time. She returned to the tribe. Soon after returning, Kaya announced that she would go into a long period of secluded cultivation, causing quite the discussion among the members of the tribe. Chapter 1137. The Death Nest. Kaya's sudden decision to go into seclusion interested her father very much. He had no idea what had happened to Kaya after she had been taken by that person who called himself the ruler of the Turtle Clan. He was actually able to make Kaya go into a long period of seclusion despite the fact that she rarely went into seclusion at all. Afterward, the patriarch of the Kaler clan immediately sent a few elders to visit the Turtle Clan several 100,000 kilometers away to verify whether Jian Shen was the ruler of the Turtle Clan or not. Around a dozen days later, the elders all returned from the Turtle Clan. They had verified that Jian Shen was the ruler of the Turtle Clan, allowing the patriarch of the Kaler clan to relax. At the same time, he was filled with even more doubt. He constantly wondered why the great ruler of the Turtle Clan would suddenly seek his own daughter, and he wondered what exactly happened after his daughter was taken away. Why had she gone into a long period of seclusion? The news that the ruler of the Turtle Clan had personally visited the Kaler clan spread like wildfire. Several surrounding large clans and organizations learned about it, which immediately led to quite a large disturbance among them. The status of the Turtle Clan had already skyrocketed in the sea realm. They were not as glorious as before, but they had truly become one of the peak organizations in the sea realm, so they obviously received the attention of countless people. The legendary ruler of the Turtle Clan was extremely unpredictable and mysterious in the eyes of the large organizations. Some well-informed clans had learned that he had once challenged the Serpent God Hall all by himself, forcing several hall elders to their wits' end. He then proceeded to the Heaven's Spirit Hall and made them bow down before he had even begun fighting. The piece of news that the 3 disciplinary elders of the hall submitted to him had caused all of them to become tongue-tied. And now, many organizations began to suspect certain matters after hearing that the ruler had personally visited the Kaler clan. They searched about everywhere to figure out the connection the ruler had with the Kaler clan. Nonetheless, the Kaler clan's status in the sea realm greatly increased after what had happened this time. Afterward, Jian Chen called for the sea goddess. With her assistance, he met Huang Wuan, who had been cultivating in a desolate region. Jian Chen had learned from the sea goddess that the secret technique planted in Huang Wuan's head had already been removed by the hall master of the sea goddess hall, which gave Jian Chen relief. Huang Wuan had stopped practicing the scripture of the aquatic sunflower and now used a cultivation method she had learned from the sea goddess. The cultivation method was of an even higher tier than the scripture of the aquatic sunflower, so it was even more suitable for her and her water spirit's body. Jian Chen stood afar and observed Huang Wuan as she sat on the ground. He did not disturb her and stood there silently. He stood there for a whole hour before finally disappearing quietly. Up above the sea realm, there was the sunny sky. The scorching sun illuminated the world with light, scorching the ground like an oven. Waves of heat radiated out. The sea surface far away from any shore was calm, like a blue mirror. It connected to the sky on the horizon. At this moment, the calm sea surface was broken. It suddenly began to ripple, quickly expanding in all directions. Gradually, the rippling increased and turned into a fountain very soon, as if something was floating up to the surface. Finally, with a huge splash, a huge column of water shot into the air. A figure took to the sky from the water, moving extremely fast. He reached an altitude of several thousand meters instantly, becoming an ant-like speck in the sky. Jian Chen hovered in the air above the sea. With a flip of his hand, a pure white thumb-sized piece of jade appeared. Under a slight tightening of his grip, the jade turned to power. A few seconds later, the space in front of Jian Chen began to violently ripple. Finally, it shattered like a mirror and a small, burly giant emerged silently from the shattered space, shining with a golden light. The light seemed to contain some mysterious power, preventing the shattered space from closing up even after quite some time. At the same time, chaotic spatial streams wreaked havoc in the shattered space. If anyone fell into it, they would become quite injured, yet the figure stood within the storm like it was nothing. The golden light around him seemed to isolate him in a different world, where the spatial streams could not approach him. At this moment, the golden figure took a step away from the shattered space. The golden light also began to fade, and without any more obstructions, the shattered space finally began to slowly close up. Jian Chen, you've finally come back from the sea realm. You've been gone for 2 months already. If you still didn't come out, I would have come looking for you personally. The burly giant flew over as he chuckled at Jian Chen. He was Tai Ta. Although he did not comprehend the mysteries of the world, he was a war god. The mysteries techniques he knew were powerful and wondrous, incomparable to the mysteries of the world. They were not the mysteries of the world, they exceeded them. Tai Ta, you've become stronger and stronger, Jian Chen sighed emotionally as he observed Tai Ta. Tai Ta's natural advantage was just far too powerful. He was blessed by the world, and the world passed on abilities to him. He had no need to go through any systematic learning to grasp these many wondrous and powerful secret techniques, and he would just possess mastery over them. Everyone would be envious of him if they knew this. Tai Ta smiled honestly and scratched his head. He seemed rather proud but amazed and helpless at the same time. He said, Jian Chen, don't praise me. My strength may be much greater now, but I still feel like I can't beat you. Back in Kargath Academy, there wasn't such a great difference between our strength, but no matter how powerful I became, I could never surpass you. Jian Chen smiled with that. Tai Ta, let's go to the death nest first. I've wasted over 2 months already, so we can't delay this any further. Jian Chen invited He Yu out of the artifact space and got him to construct a space gate for them. Afterward, he left through it with Tai Ta. On the Three Saint Mountain of Three Saint Island, the heavenly enchantress sat with her legs crossed on a huge rock by a cliff. Her figure was beautiful and her white dress seemed even paler than snow. She seemed like an otherworldly goddess. The simple zither of the demonic cry was placed on her legs. Her thin fingers slowly danced about the strings, playing beautiful tunes. It was extremely pleasant, enough to unknowingly intoxicate people in such a way that they could not resist. The strings of the zither slowly trembled. The beautiful music lacked happiness and joy. It was inflexible, becoming rather sorrowful and heavy. The heavenly enchantress frowned slightly. She removed the veil on her face and revealed her indescribably pretty appearance. However, some worry and helplessness was present as well. A white, chubby boy, who only seemed to be 3 or 4, currently tried to climb up the rock arduously behind her. His eyes were filled with unyielding determination. Chapter 1138, Xiaobao the white, chubby boy pressed his body against the huge rock. He stood on the slight protrusions of the rock, and he was over 10 meters from the group. It was very difficult to imagine that a child at such an age could climb so high through his own hard work. At this moment, the boy slipped. He immediately began to fall from the rock. He was clearly frightened, subconsciously calling out, "Mom." Before the boy could finish speaking, a white figure had appeared beside him almost instantaneously. She extended a hand to catch him, saving him from danger. The white figure that had suddenly appeared was the heavenly enchantress. However, the zither of the demonic cry had now disappeared from her hands, even though it almost never left her side, now replaced by the boy. The heavenly enchantress cradled the boy in her arms. She looked at him with mixed emotions along with an unhideable fondness. "Xiaobao, you're not listening again. Have you forgotten what I've said to you?" The heavenly enchantress chided as she sternly stared at the boy. The boy was extremely active and mischievous. He did not seem to fear the heavenly enchantress at all. He extended his chubby, dusty arms to grab the heavenly enchantress' neck. He said, "Mum, Xiaobao has been very good. Xiaobao is only thinking of Mum and wants to spend time with Mum." With that, the boy stared at the heaven enchantress in vivid interest with his bright eyes and seriously said, "Xiaobao knows you've been very sad. Don't be sad anymore, okay?" A rare gentleness appeared on the heavenly enchantress' face. She gently rubbed Xiaobao's head, but she produced a deep sigh inside. She was filled with bitterness. At this moment, 3 figures flew over from afar. They stopped near the heavenly enchantress in the end, and these figures were Qin Qin, Xiao Qian, and Xiao Yu. Qin Qin's disposition had undergone a very great change from a few years ago. She now possessed an additional feeling of refinement, as if she had broken free from mortal affairs. Qin Qin had already sensed the heavenly melody with the assistance of the heavenly enchantress and embarked on a unique path of cultivation. However, just a few years was not enough for her strength to increase too much. She was only equal to Earth Saint Masters, so she needed Xiao Qian and Xiao Yu's help to fly. Mum, look. The 3 sisters have come," Xiaobao immediately squealed out in excitement from the heavenly enchantress' bosom. He broke free from her hold and happily ran to the 3 of them. "Sister, huggy." Xiaobao opened up his arms in front of Qin Qin. Qin Qin fondly lifted up Xiaobao while Xiao Qian and Xiao Yu gathered over as well. They played around with Xiaobao as they laughed, and their gazes for the boy were filled with fondness and love. Xiaobao's status on 3 Saint Island was extremely special. He had basically become the young master there, being looked after by Qin Qin, Xiao Qian, and Xiao Yu daily. He was protected and loved by them. However, the relationship between the heavenly enchantress and Xiaobao only seemed to be foster mother and foster son in the 3 ladies' eyes. Qin Qin carried Xiaobao to one side and played around with him. However, the heavenly enchantress remained where she was with Xiao Qian and Xiao Yu. Their smiles immediately vanished after Xiaobao had been carried away and faint worry filled their faces. "Mother, we have successfully exchanged for the 10,000-year heavenly resource, the Heaven's Heart Lotus, at Biyao Island. It's said that the Heaven's Heart Lotus has wondrous effects at changing constitution, so it should be effective to Xiao Bao. Xiao Qian pulled out a square jade box from her space ring and passed it to the heavenly enchantress. Master, the properties of the heaven's heart lotus are far too powerful. If Xiao Bao ingests it directly, I fear that he won't be able to withstand the potency. We need to use a few other medicines with the heaven's heart lotus to make it into a pill, said Xiao Yu. The heavenly enchantress thought with furrowed brows. Afterward, she nodded and said, Xiao Qian, Xiao Yu, I'll go to the Tianyuan continent to find a highly ranked alchemist to refine the heaven's heart lotus. You need to protect the island while I'm gone. Yes, master. Xiao Qian and Xiao Yu replied together. The heavenly enchantress paused slightly before adding, also, you have to look after Xiao Bao. That child always likes to run around. The terrain of the mountain is perilous, so you can't let him come across any danger. If something happens, contact me immediately using the secret technique. The heavenly enchantress immediately left the island with the heavenly resource after telling them what to do while she was gone. Xiao Qian and Xiao Yu watched the heavenly enchantress leave in a daze. They both sighed gently and one of them said, I hope the pill from the heaven's heart lotus can change Xiao Bao's constitution so he can cultivate like any other person. Otherwise, Xiao Bao's fate will be, sigh, Xiao Bao really is pitiful. Not only did he lose his parents as soon as he was born, but he's also a cripple that almost never appears. We've fed him so many several thousand-year heavenly resources over the years, but we unfortunately still haven't been able to change his constitution. It's only made Xiao Bao's body become much more powerful than an ordinary child. There's still nothing inside him. Not even a speck of Saint Force. We watched Xiao Bao grow up. He may not be our child, but we're like his family. We need to make it so that he can cultivate normally no matter what. If we run out of choices, we might as well ask Master to request a 100,000-year heavenly resource from Mercenary City. In a certain place on the Tianyuan continent, an extremely huge formation covered a pitch-black forest. The forest was shrouded by black mist, which surged about like dragons. The mist seemed like vicious and terrifying ghosts that were brandishing their teeth and claws from time to time, which was chilling. All the vegetation in the forest only had two colors, red and black. The black trees were hidden in the surging black mist, seeming like huge ghosts from afar. The blood-red plants radiated a demonic light, as if they were covered with blood. The ground was scarlet as well, like dried blood. The forest enveloped by the formation was the most dangerous place on the Tianyuan continent, the Death Nest. The Death Nest was single-handedly created by the strongest human, Mo Tianyun, many years ago. Countless experts had fallen in the war between the three races in ancient times, and Mo Tianyun used his great abilities to move and bury all their corpses in one location. Regardless of saint emperors, saint kings, or saint rulers, they were all buried in the current location, the Death Nest. The Death Nest was the grave of many saint emperors among the three races. The ground had been dyed red by the blood of saint emperors, so it remained scarlet even after countless years. Even the plants that grew there became demonically red. The ground in a radius of 10,000 kilometers was withered and barren. Nothing grew and it was desolate, having been affected by the Death Nest. The region was unsuitable for habitation and even the sky had become heavy. Even with a scorching sun in the middle of the sky, it was gloomy. None of the sunlight could reach there, making it rather cold in fact. Chapter 1139, Vengeful Spirits of the Death Nest. 1. Even though many heavenly resources grew in the Death Nest, no one went there to collect them. Its infamy completely deterred Heaven's Saint Masters who were the peak-level experts of smaller kingdoms. Probably only saint rulers possessed the ability to protect themselves, but that was in the very outskirts. They needed to be careful as well and not go too far in. There was a rumor on the Tianyuan continent that all the plants that grew within the Death Nest possessed very powerful yin qi and grudges that could not be purged. If they were ingested by people, there would be no benefits at all and would instead lead to endless detrimental effects. As a result, there were extremely few people who entered the Death Nest since ancient times. A few powerful saint kings would enter from time to time and seek treasures that had been lost since ancient times. Suddenly, the space several hundred meters above the death nest began to violently distort. A space gate slower formed and the robed Jian Chen, the bare-chested Tai Ta, and the black-robed He Yu stepped out. The three of them hovered at an altitude of several hundred meters as they curiously observed their surroundings. Soon afterward, the three of them frowned. A seriousness filled their faces, as well as a little bit of surprise. The death nest really is worthy of being called the greatest zone of danger on the Tianyuan continent. We still haven't even entered it, yet it's already pressuring me psychologically, Jian Chen said. Tai Ta's eyes shone as he constantly observed the surrounding area. He would look at the sky sometimes and then look at the forest of death enveloped by a huge formation at other times. He said, "This place is so evil. I seem to be able to feel the wailing of countless souls." No, that's not it. It feels like faces of ghosts are appearing and brandishing their jaws and claws at us. Those are all vicious ghosts. Jian Chen, this place is frightening. As a war god, Tai Ta's senses were greater than Jian Chen, so he sensed it all much clearer. Mo Tianyun sure has done a lot to create such an evil place. Just why did he do this? Was it to raise the saint's fruit? Is it really worth it to use the corpses of countless experts just for a piece of fruit? He Yu murmured. He was unsettled. He finally understood the terror of this place after personally witnessing it himself. The yin qi and presence of grudges here have reached a terrifyingly powerful level. It can shroud the sun and moon, affecting the surroundings as well. Just why did Mo Tianyun do this? Is this an ability that has surpassed Saint Emperor? And I can actually feel a heart-shaking power in the formation. This formation definitely can withstand attacks from Saint Emperors easily. Probably only those who have surpassed Saint Emperor can break through it, He Yu said gruffly. The three of them remained outside for a while. Afterward, Jian Chen said, Tai Ta, Senior He Yu, let's go in and check out these vengeful spirits. Let's see just how frightening they are. Jian Chen traveled toward the huge formation with Tai Ta and He Yu. The formation around the death nest only seemed to exist to trap the beings inside. It could not stop the entry out outsiders. As a result, the three of them smoothly passed through and entered the death nest. As soon as they stepped in, they felt cold. Yin qi that was several times denser flooded them, making them feel like they had stepped into a cavern of ice instead. What powerful yin qi! This yin qi is enough to claim the lives of Earth's Saint Masters instantaneously. Even Heaven's Saint Masters won't dare to stick around for too long, exclaimed Jian Chen. Currently, the three of them were at the edge of the forest. The black mist in the forest surged and churned unceasingly. The ground was scarlet, making it seem like demonic blood, but it was filled with malevolence. It was sunny outside, yet everything became gloomy inside the death nest. Visibility was minimal. In the forest, red and black mixed together. Countless ancient trees and dense grass swayed in the wind, making them seem like ghosts moving about. Coupled with the wild wind, ghosts seemed to be wailing, which was chilling. The three of them were especially cautious as this was the first time they had ever come across such a hellish place. Even though they were powerful, unknown dangers lurked right before them, so they dared not to be careless. Jian Chen attempted to expand his presence, but as soon as it left his body, an abnormally icy presence invaded his soul. It made him feel a stabbing pain in his soul, where even he became rather dizzy. Jian Chen immediately drew back his presence and was no longer willing to use it anymore. His presence was wondrous, but it was not all-powerful. It would be suppressed in some special environments. The three of them walked through the gloomy forest as the mist constantly churned. It radiated waves of cold, as if countless claws of ghosts were touching them all over. It was hair-raising, and they became covered in goosebumps. At this moment, strands of iciness emerged from the mist and clung to Jian Chen's skin before entering his body. Jian Chen sensed it, but he did nothing to resist it. Instead, he relaxed and allowed the iciness to enter his body. At the same time, a weak ripple of energy appeared beside him. He Yu and Tai Ta had come across a similar situation as Jian Chen. They started circulating their much more powerful energy to erase the invading iciness. The iciness had entered Jian Chen's flesh and blood. It wormed into Jian Chen's organs before beginning to devour all vitality present in his body. He immediately felt his vitality leak away bit by bit through the iciness that had entered him. Looks like this iciness contains these properties. It can invade the body and devour vitality. One of Ming Dong's great-grandfathers had entered the death nest with Senior Tian Jian in the past, and Ming Dong's great-grandfather passed away because he was struck with a curse from the death nest. Was it this iciness? Jian Chen thought inside. With a single thought, he yanked back all his vitality that was leaking away. Afterward, with a small tremble, he used his powerful body to shatter the iciness within him. The three of them continued on their way. They came across quite a few heavenly resources, but it was a pity that all the resources had been contaminated by yin qi. They could not be ingested, so they were just a waste. The three of them traveled a few more kilometers. Suddenly, a huge ghost's face surged out of the black mist, biting at the three of them with its enormous mouth. Jian Chen, Tai Ta, and He Yu did nothing. They had just come in here, so they had no idea about the dangers. They wanted to use a weak existence like this to test their strength. Then they could find the best way to deal with similar dangers in the future. The ghost face was completely formed from grudges. It had naturally formed because of the endless amounts of grudges present, and it was equivalent to a heaven saint master. Biting down, the ghost face devoured the three of them. They felt their vision darken. They had plunged into pure darkness in that moment. An even icier presence wormed its way into their bodies, where even their souls were invaded by the grudges. After understanding that the ghost face possessed offensive capabilities, they easily dispersed it, causing it to turn back into a black mist that drifted away. Chapter 1140, Vengeful Spirits of the Death Nest, 2. The presence of grudges filled the death nest. Black mist surged as cold wind blew, making the vegetation their sway with the wind. The wind sounded like the wails of ghosts. The death nest was split into 3 zones. The first zone was enough to threaten saint rulers, and the vengeful spirits that appeared there were mostly at the level of saint rulers. Saint King vengeful spirits would appear there rarely as well. It would spell almost certain doom for any heaven saint masters that entered the area, since even saint rulers had the chance of dying. The second zone was where Saint King vengeful spirits gathered, with a very small chance for Saint Emperor vengeful spirits to appear. Only Saint Kings could move freely there. The third zone was the most terrifying place of the death nest, as it was where Saint Emperor corpses were buried. It was the lair of Saint Emperor vengeful spirits and was extremely terrifying. Even Saint Kings at great perfection needed to be very careful in that zone. The Saint Emperor vengeful spirits were born from the grudges of the dead. They had lost their abilities from when they were still alive long ago, but they were still quite difficult to deal with. They were extremely powerful. Jian Chen, Tai Ta, and He Yu moved through the death nest, proceeding to the depths. They encountered attacks from many ghost faces, and the iciness that had invaded their bodies earlier appeared very often as well. However, it could not stop their advance. After traveling several dozen kilometers, a blurry figure condensed from black mist appeared several hundred meters away from them. It sat on the ground, inhaling and exhaling the presence of the grudges into the surroundings. It absorbed the essence from the ground to cultivate. All of this essence originated from the ground that had been dyed by the blood of countless saint emperors. The 3 of them stopped and stared at the vengeful spirit a few hundred meters away. After a period of close observation, Tai Ta said, "That vengeful spirit's already at Saint King. I never thought we'd come across such a powerful vengeful spirit so quickly in the first zone. If other saint rulers came across this vengeful spirit, it would be very difficult for them to survive. It seems to be cultivating. That's unbelievable. These vengeful spirits condensed from the grudges of the dead can actually cultivate. Do they already possess a conscience? Jian Shen sighed in amazement. He found it rather unbelievable. Afterward, Jian Shen used the illusory flash and shot toward the Saint King vengeful spirit several hundred meters away. At the same time, the vengeful spirit discovered Jian Shen and suddenly stood up. It was entirely condensed from black mist and the endless grudges of the dead, so it was rather ethereal and not really tangible. The appearance of the vengeful spirit was blurry. It seemed like a person, but it lacked facial features. It turned its head to look in Jian Shen's direction before floating toward him in the form of a black mist. It moved extremely quick. Although the vengeful spirit possessed the strength of Saint Kings, it was nowhere near as powerful as an actual Saint King. Jian Shen began fighting the vengeful spirit while studying it at the same time. A while later, Jian Shen finally confirmed that the vengeful spirit lacked self-awareness. Cultivation was instinctual to it, so Jian Shen breathed out in relief. If the vengeful spirits possessed were self-aware, they would be far too terrifying. After all, there were many Saint Emperor vengeful spirits in the third zone. Jian Shen chopped through the vengeful spirit with a single stroke of the Emperor armament, reducing it to black mist. However, it recondensed the next moment and continued to fight Jian Shen. The suffocating iciness and the endless amount of grudges formed a very terrifying attack. The iciness invaded Jian Shen's body in attempt to devour his vitality while the grudges charged at Jian Shen's soul. However, Jian Shen remained unaffected by both. The vengeful spirits were extremely difficult to kill. They were condensed from an endless amount of grudges and were not living like humans, nor did they possess the weakness of a soul. Without any exaggeration, they could be described as invincible. The only method to deal with them was to constantly attack them to exhaust their energy. Once their energy was completely consumed, they would be reduced to nothing more than a part of the black mist. With an emotionless glare, Jian Shen attacked the vengeful spirit time and time again with his Emperor armament. Only after killing it more than 10 times did all of its power disappear, turning back into a surging black mist. Jian Shen, the power you use is nothing ordinary. If you use your power against these vengeful spirits, it will quicken their deaths. It would be very difficult for other Saint Kings to use less time to deal with one if they came across a vengeful spirit, He Yu said. He stood with arms crossed next to Tai Ta. Jian Shen seemed to be in thought. He then put the Emperor armament away. He continued on his way with He Yu and Tai Ta. There were extremely few Saint King vengeful spirits in the first zone of the Death Nest. Most of them were at the level of Saint Rulers, so they did not come across any more Saint King vengeful spirits during the following journey. After traveling several thousand kilometers, they finally passed through the first zone of the Death Nest and reached the second. The iciness and presence of grudges that pervaded the second zone were 10 times greater than the first. The iciness ate away at the body while the grudges invaded the soul. It forced the three of them to circulate their energy to resist them. Jian Shen had already fused a small part of chaotic force into his body, relying on the terrifying defense of the chaotic body. A faint layer of golden light appeared around Tai Ta. It isolated him from the iciness and grudges of the dead. Even He Yu began to use his own power to resist the two. The three of them became rather surprised when they had first arrived in the second zone. Just the yin qi and grudges were enough for Saint Kings to treat them seriously. They sighed emotionally at the terror of the Death Nest again. A few bones and shrapnel of weapons began appearing in the second zone. The bones were littered with the marks of time, clearly having existed for countless years already. The pieces of weapons had been created from extremely valuable materials, but they had already been contaminated by the yin qi and the grudges, so they now bore a malicious nature. They could not be used. These are bones of a member of the dragon clan, He Yu suddenly said as he stared at a bone the size of a human. His voice was filled with shock. Jian Shen and Tai Ta glanced over when they heard that. The unknown piece of bone was dark red in color, as if it had been dyed by blood. The dragon clan disappeared in ancient times. It's already been 1,000,000 years since, so this bone was clearly left behind before the dragon clan had vanished. It's been so long already, so it should have turned to dust long ago. How can it still exist and be in such a perfect condition? Yu gruffly said as disbelief flooded his face. The bone is filled with yin qi and grudges. Is it these two energies that prevent the bone from decaying, which is why it's still perfect after at least 1,000,000 years? Jian Chen guessed. Yu thought attentively and said, that should be the case. Doesn't that mean there are many bones left behind from the ancient times in the death nest then? The three of them continued on their way. They discovered many bones and more pieces of weapons as they traveled. There was no lack of bones from the Dragon and Phoenix clans, which were recognized at a glance by Yu. They had even found a space ring buried in the soil that had not been completely destroyed. Items could still be removed from within. However, nothing in it caught Jian Chen's eye. Chapter 1141, Saint Emperor. The dangers in the second zone were much greater than the first. All the roaming vengeful spirits possessed the strength of Saint Kings. The weakest were at the first heavenly layer while the more powerful ones were at great perfection. The vengeful spirits at the level of Saint Kings basically all cultivated instinctively. They absorbed the grudges of the dead and the essence from the soul. Although they lacked self-awareness, their strength was indisputable. The three of them boldly walked through the second zone, traveling straight to the depths of the death nest. All the vengeful spirits they came across were handled by Jian Chen. His chaotic force was much more effective at dealing with the vengeful spirits than Saint Force. It could make the vengeful spirits disperse faster, so he was even faster at killing them than Yu. This was not because Yu was weaker than Jian Chen. He was a Saint King at great perfection, but the energy within him was on the same level as Saint Force. It lacked the special effects of chaotic force. In the messy forest, Jian Chen slowly pulled back his emperor armament after dealing with a vengeful spirit. This was the 16th vengeful spirit at the level of a Saint King he had killed in the second zone. But, at this very moment, an icy wind blew over and 6 figures slowly appeared in the dense mist several thousand meters ahead. They fused with the mist as they gently drifted over, controlling the mist to head toward the three of them. There's actually another 6. Jian Chen's eyes narrowed. He suddenly tightened his grasp on his emperor armament. Just when he wanted to charge up and fight the 6 of them, a golden light flashed past his side. Tai Ta, completely shrouded by golden light, had already begun charging toward the 6 vengeful spirits. At the same time, he said with his deep, muffled voice, Jian Chen, take a rest. Let me deal with them. I can do it. With that, Jian Chen nodded slightly and did not charge up. He remained where he was, watching the battle between the vengeful spirits and Tai Ta. Tai Ta was no longer the weakling from before. After absorbing the droplet of Ergin's essence blood, he now possessed the strength to rival Saint Kings and was ranked near the top among Saint Kings. A golden axe appeared in Tai Ta's hand. Wielding it with both hands, he called out, mysteries of war, destruction. With that, the golden light around him grew brighter, enveloping him in a blinding light. At the same time, a supreme battle intent filled the surroundings, actually blowing away the endless amounts of yin qi and grudges of the dead that filled the area. Tai Ta's presence was elevated to the limit. He seemed to become a god of war in that moment, an invincible god that lived for war. Suddenly, the axe in Tai Ta's hands turned into a devastating golden light, sweeping toward the 6 vengeful spirits. The axe fused with Tai Ta's presence, resonating with battle intent throughout his surroundings. It seemed to contain some supreme mysteries of the world. The blinding axe did not land on the 6 vengeful spirits. Instead, it fell 5 meters away from the vengeful spirits and the space there immediately began to violently shake. An extremely powerful energy flashed past that region of space. The next moment, the vengeful spirits actually began to collapse, turning into dense black mist. A sliver of shock flashed through Jian Chen's eyes when he witnessed this. Although he knew that Tai Ta had become extremely powerful, he had never thought that he had actually become so strong. The vengeful spirits were all around the fourth and fifth heavenly layers. Although they were not as powerful as when they were still alive, they were still not easy to be dealt with, yet a single swing from Tai Ta's axe had collapsed all 6 of them, greatly exceeding his expectations. The 6 vengeful spirits condensed again and continued to charge at Tai Ta without fear. Mysteries of war, destruction. Tai Ta wielded the axe with 2 hands and used the same attack. The vengeful spirits had seemed to become extremely fragile, collapsing once again. With every death, a portion of the vengeful spirit's strength would disperse. After collapsing around a dozen times from Tai Ta's attacks, the 6 vengeful spirits finally ran out of energy to reform and turned into dense black mist that wrapped around Tai Ta. They attempted to use their iciness and devastating grudges to invade Tai Ta's body and soul, but they were all obstructed by the faint golden light. At this moment, extremely powerful Yin Qi and grudges suddenly appeared. They easily broke through the defenses of the 3 of them. The Yin Qi and grudges were several times stronger than the ones from Saint King's, possibly even a dozen times stronger. The 3 of them immediately felt a wave of coldness. The iciness that had invaded their bodies seemed to freeze their vitality, while the grudges that invaded their heads made their souls ache with a stabbing pain. All 3 of their expressions changed. They began to circulate the energy within them as hard as they could before finally purging the invading iciness and grudges. They immediately turned around. A huge demonic figure had silently appeared behind them. He was over 10 meters tall, and although he was condensed from the grudges of the dead, he seemed extremely realistic, as if he was tangible. His facial features were well defined. He was actually a middle-aged man who seemed to be in his 40s. His face was steadfast and his facial features were sharp, but his eyes were pitch black. He wore robes completely condensed from the pervading grudges and wore a cape. He seemed rather extraordinary. Although he stood there silently, an invisible pressure radiated from him, pressuring Jian Chen and Tai Ta inside. Saint Emperor! Jian Chen involuntarily exclaimed. His heart violently trembled. He felt like the existence before him was undefeatable. Tai Ta arrived in front of Jian Chen and sternly stared at the figure. However, his eyes lit up very soon, and he cried out, "It's Gustis." "He's Gustis." "What Gustis?" Jian Chen gruffly asked. He was filled with doubt. Tai Ta immediately became rather emotional. He said, "I've obtained a portion of Senior Ergin's memories." Gustis was the ruler of the berserkers among the 100 races. He was extremely powerful and had reached the peak of Saint Emperor. He was known as the most powerful Saint Emperor in his age, and only those beyond Saint Emperor could keep him at bay. During those years, he followed Senior Ergens to war everywhere, but he died to the hands of multiple Class 9 magical beasts in the end. Chapter 1142, He Yu fights Gustis. After learning about the identity of the vengeful spirit before death, Jian Chen and He Yu immediately became extremely stern. The burly and tangible vengeful spirit actually possessed such a great background. He was known as the strongest Saint Emperor, so his strength was indisputable. Even though he had been reduced to a vengeful spirit now, he was probably a very powerful vengeful spirit. Tai Ta clearly had not realized that danger was close. He stared at Gustis and out of slight excitement said, "Senior Gustis, do you still remember the past?" Tai Ta, he is no longer the strongest Saint Emperor of the past. He's only a vengeful spirit condensed from the grudges of the dead, Jian Chen heavily explained. Tai Ta quickly calmed down. He stared blankly at Gustis. He knew extremely well that he had come from the death nest and that the Gustis right in front of him was no longer the strongest Saint Emperor in Ergin's memories. He was now a vengeful spirit. Gustis stood there silently. His face was expressionless and cool. He did not respond at all to what Tai Ta had said, as if he could not hear Tai Ta at all. Suddenly, Gustis moved. He used a very brutal attack, hurling a punch at He Yu. The fist seemed extremely simple and straightforward, but the single fist could make mountains collapse, the ground crack, and the world darken. The surrounding black mist filled was affected by Gusty's punch. It began to violently tremble, as if dragons were dancing within them. His attack was different from normal vengeful spirits. He seemed to possess some of his abilities from his former life, so the simple punch possessed a terrifying might. Back off. Hey, you yelled. He became extremely stern. He felt that his battle against the vengeful spirit would be much more difficult than with the human and magical beast Saint Emperors he had faced before. After all, Gustis was just far too strong when he was alive. In ancient times, a place that teemed with Saint Emperors, he had the power to surpass all and be crowned as the strongest. At the same time, Heiyu instantly punched out as well. Heiyu dared not to hold anything back against such a powerful vengeful spirit. He used everything he had of his great perfection Saint King's strength. Heiyu's original form was a mutated divine alligator. He was comparable to beasts of antiquity, and beasts of antiquity were far stronger than regular magical beasts. Regular magical beasts were also tougher than other experts of the same level of cultivation, so Heiyu's punch was much more powerful than a punch from regular Saint Kings at great perfection. Bang! The two fists collided and produced a muffled sound. A violent ripple of energy expanded in all directions with their fists as the epicenter, kicking soil into the air and causing the ground to crack. All the mist in the surrounding area was blown clean away by the energy, revealing unconcealed land. Jian Chen and Tai Ta trembled violently. They struggled to stand firm even with their strength as the violent ripple of energy swept by. Jian Chen was shocked inside. He had seen quite a few Saint Kings at great perfection. The great elder of the Yuan sect, Yi Yangzi, who had once attacked him was a Saint King at great perfection. However, a large difference existed between him and Heiyu. Yet, Heiyu was actually blown away by Gusty's punch. A rock several hundred meters away shattered while Gusty stood firm like a mountain. He remained where he was. Jian Chen was astounded. Gusty's strength was so great that he could be described as a deviant. He found it rather difficult to believe that Heiyu had actually been blown away so easily. Jian Chen knew that Gustis was extremely powerful when he was still alive, but he was only a vengeful spirit now. He was no longer as great as before, so it was shocking for him to still possess such terrifying strength. Saint Kings are definitely not his opponent. Even great perfection is not enough. Only other Saint Emperors can rival Gustis, Jian Chen quickly concluded inside. Heiyu roared at the sky and shot over as a black streak of light. He was in a horrible condition, but his presence was strong and his battle intent was even greater. There was no fear on his face, only elated spirits and a will to fight. An extremely vast energy rippled out. It was extremely terrifying, and with its appearance, all the Yin-Qin grudges within the death nest became rather calm. The dense black mist around Heiyu was quickly forced away. A shiny machete appeared in Heiyu's hand. He wielded it with one hand as he began fighting with Gustis. Swinging it heavily, each stroke possessed the force to conquer mountains. This was a weapon with origin energy. Heiyu seemed to have become a true Saint Emperor now that he was wielding the machete. He fought Gustis in a head-on battle. When he swung his machete, it would knock away Gustis' earth-shaking punches before continuing toward Gustis without weakening in form, cleaving Gustis in half. Gustis was no longer as powerful as before while facing an origin energy weapon. Origin energy was a powerful energy that belonged to a whole different domain. It could not be compared to any energy of this world, so even true Saint Emperors dared not to accept attacks that were laced with this energy, let alone Gustis who was condensed from the grudges of the dead. Gustis' body healed instantly. He seemed like he had never been injured in the first place, and he hurled another punch. The punch broke through the surroundings, causing space to shatter and fall into darkness as it moved. With the machete in his hand, Heiyu firmly swung it. There were no tricks. It was a simple and straightforward attack, striking Gustis' fist. Gusties had become very weak before the origin energy weapon. Boom! Suddenly, Gusties' huge figure erupted and turned into a ball of extremely dense mist. The dense mist surged toward Heiyu before completely enveloping him. At the same time, yin qi and grudges that were powerful enough to make Heiyu's expression change invaded his body. The yin qi was so dense that the layer of energy outside him could not obstruct it, so it quickly entered his body. It began to devour all the vitality within him. At the same time, the pure grudges attacked his soul, causing a stabbing pain to appear in Heiyu's soul. Heiyu bellowed out and his origin energy armor immediately appeared. It completely isolated him from the invading yin qi, and a thumb-sized pearl also appeared above his head. It radiated with a light that enveloped Heiyu, protecting his soul. Heiyu was no longer in an inferior position now that the three treasures had finally appeared. He was completely unaffected. Without any consideration for the consequences, Heiyu began to attack as hard as he could. He swung the machete in his hand at the dense black mist as it glowed with a white light, and every blade of light that flickered past would cause the mist to disperse slightly. The black mist around Heiyu began to churn violently once it realized how it was no longer affecting him. It recondensed into Gusties' form in the distance. Heiyu angrily roared out. He charged threateningly toward Gusties with his three origin energy treasures. This time, Gusties did not bother with Heiyu anymore. With a slight tremble, he turned into a black figure that disappeared off into the distance. He had left. Heiyu did not pursue. He stared deeply in the direction Gusties had vanished while a seriousness leaked from his gaze. A while later, his three treasures all vanished, having been put away. "Senior Heiyu, are you fine?" Jian Chen and Tai Tai immediately walked over from afar. They asked in concern. Heiyu gently shook his head and said, "It's fortunate that I had my three origin energy treasures. Otherwise, I definitely wouldn't have been his opponent. Probably only Rui Jin with the secret techniques of the Dragon Clan could rival him. That vengeful spirit is just too strong. No wonder he was named as the strongest Saint Emperor in the past." The three of them all fell silent. Even using his three origin energy treasures, Heiyu could not collapse Gusties' vengeful spirit, and it had still managed to flee in the end. The vengeful spirit's strength had reached an unbelievable level. It was enough to threaten Saint Kings at great perfection. Just how many people were its opponent in the current world? Jian Chen said after some silence, "Senior, there shouldn't be many vengeful spirits that are as powerful as Gusties. I don't think the other Saint Emperor vengeful spirits are that powerful." Chapter 1143, An Unexpected Gain. I hope that's the case. If there are many vengeful spirits as powerful as Gusties, we'd probably only be able to protect ourselves after Rui Jin, Hong Lian, and I work together, Heiyu gruffly said. He felt slightly pressured by Gusties' appearance. The three of them continued, directly making their way to the third zone of the death nest. They were attacked by many vengeful spirits as they moved, and all of them were Saint Kings. Saint Emperor vengeful spirits were extremely rare. They did not come across a second one. The three of them would come across a few bones that originated from ancient times, but the bones had been invaded by the yin qi and grudges of the dead long ago, explaining why they remained in perfect condition. After traveling over 1,000 kilometers through the second zone, the three of them finally reached the border. They saw that the yin qi, a few thousand meters ahead of them, was thick and dense like a black mist as it rolled about violently. Ghost faces seemed to be conjured from time to time and seemed to be brandishing their teeth and claws at Jian Chen. They would produce dreadful wails as well. This was the depths of the death nest, the third zone, the most dangerous zone. It was known as the homeland of Saint Emperor vengeful spirits since this was where they gathered. The three of them stopped at the border between the two zones. They stared at the third zone sternly, but they did not step over the boundary. They became rather conflicted inside. Just the yin qi and grudges that filled the third zone were enough to pressure them. The power of the yin qi and grudges here had reached a frightening level. Jian Shen and Tai Ta were both frowning. The third zone is a little too terrifying. If saint rulers step into it, they'll probably pass away in just a few seconds from the energies present, Jian Shen gruffly said. The third zone could be described as a killing ground for saint rulers. Even without vengeful spirits, saint rulers would not be able to survive for very long. Only saint kings can enter the third zone, and they need to circulate their energy as hard as they can to repel the yin qi and grudges. This will lead to an extremely rapid exhaustion of energy, so we can't waste too much time in there, said He Yu. We need to enter even if that's the case. We'll back out once we find the precise location of the saint's fruit. Once it ripens, we'll go in and take it, said Jian Shen. Determination flowed from his eyes. He needed to go in no matter how great the dangers were. The saint's fruit only appeared once every 40,000 years. It was the only shortcut to Saint Emperor, so he needed to obtain the saint's fruit this time. The three of them entered the third zone side by side. As soon as they set foot over the boundary, a bone-chilling iciness immediately invaded their bodies. At the same time, the grudges of the dead that were at least a dozen times more powerful than before wormed toward their souls. The energies were so powerful that they were comparable to the yin qi and grudges present within Gusties earlier. The three of them were prepared. They immediately began to circulate their energy, creating a barrier outside their bodies to obstruct the invasion. Strands of chaotic force surged from Jian Chen's chaotic Niden. It filled every corner of his body, using all the advantages that the chaotic body offered. At the same time, a layer of dark light moved about the surface of Jian Chen's body. This was chaotic force circulating around his skin. Tai Ta became enveloped by a blinding golden light. He seemed to have become a golden cocoon, where only a blurry figure of him could be seen from outside. He seemed like he was a god in descent, possessing a mighty appearance. A layer of extremely terrifying energy also pulsed on the surface of He Yu's body. All three of them pushed their energies to the maximum to protect themselves upon stepping foot into the third zone. Jian Shen let out Rui Jin and Hong Lian. There should be quite a few Saint Emperor vengeful spirits here. We should increase the strength we possess, He Yu said to Jian Shen. Jian Shen nodded and immediately pulled out the saint artifact. He let Rui Jin and Hong Lian out from the artifact space. The two of them had been warned by Jian Shen when they were still in the artifact space, so they knew about the current situation. As a result, they had made preparations before they emerged, using their various abilities to ward off the invading energies. Rui Jin was enveloped by a golden light as well, appearing like a second Tai Ta. The only difference was that the light from him seemed to be a little duller than Tai Ta's. A layer of scarlet flames coated Hong Lian, causing the surrounding temperature to quickly skyrocket. Her flames were an existence of supreme yang, so they just happened to suppress the yin qi and grudges of the dead. As soon as the flames appeared, the surrounding energies immediately moved away from her and dared not to get anywhere near her. Jian Shen, Tai Ta, He Yu, and Rui Jin immediately moved away from Hong Lian. Although the flames posed no harm to them, it was extremely uncomfortable to remain near such a terrifying temperature for long periods of time. Get a little closer to me. The energies around me are relatively thinner, so it'll decrease your energy consumption, Hong Lian said to them. With that, the four of them looked at each other and they could not help but smile wryly. Tai Ta said with his muffled voice, Senior Hong Lian, I can't get too close to you. Your flames bake me uncomfortably. They're too hot. The four of them remained where they were. Although Hong Lian's flames had already been reduced in strength under her control, the terrifying temperature was still not something they wanted to endure. It could not harm them, but it felt like torture. Hong Lian smiled. For her flames to be so powerful, her strength had obviously completely recovered. She was at the great perfection of Saint King once again. This was all because of the divine water of the world. It could completely cure the backlash from using the rebirth of flames. Rui Jin and Hong Lian's appearance undoubtedly increased the strength of Jian Chen's party. Even if they became encircled by Saint Emperor vengeful spirits in the third zone, they would be able to deal with them calmly. Jian Chen had no idea where the saint's fruit grew. The sea goddess did not tell him the precise location, so he could only search for it in the third zone. The third zone was the homeland of vengeful spirits. There were many Saint Emperor vengeful spirits. Jian Chen's party came across over 10 of them as they moved around. Although they were not as powerful as Gusties, they could not be underestimated. Hong Lian dealt with them all. Her flames of supreme yang were the bane of existences that skewed toward Yin. If Hong Lian dealt with the vengeful spirits, she would be even more effective than Rui Jin. In a vague sense, Hong Lian had become the main force of the party. Dangers and fortuitous encounters existed together in the death nest. There were even more bones and shrapnel of weaponry here. They had all been left behind by Saint Emperors in that age. They even found a few broken pieces of armor and space rings. It was a pity that many of the space rings had been completely destroyed already, so they could not be opened. Jian Chen, this space ring doesn't seem to have been completely destroyed. Tai Ta ran over from nearby and happily passed an old space ring to Jian Chen. Jian Chen accepted the space ring and discovered that it was indeed still intact. He opened it in the end after much difficulty. It was a space ring worn by a Saint Emperor, so the wealth inside was extremely great. However, the energies present in the death nest had already invaded the interior, destroying many of the items in there by turning them to dust. Only a few items made from special materials remained. Suddenly, Jian Chen's face changed and he pulled out a 10-meter-long square tablet. Examining it carefully, he became delighted. This is a Saint-tier battle skill. Jian Chen called out. He was extremely excited, as if he had found some supreme treasure. With that, He Yu, Rui Jin, and Hong Lian all gathered over. They sighed emotionally. It really is a Saint-tier battle skill. You've already gained much with just this. There was an image of a human on the stone tablet. Only the back of a big man could be seen. He stood in the sky, above the clouds. He looked down on the world, like a lord. The stone tablet possessed nothing else other than this image. Its name was not known. The figure in the tablet seemed to be standing there casually, but he gave people a feeling that he had fused with the world. It possessed an odd presence, both vast and majestic. The figure was only a key to unlocking the Saint-tier battle skill. The true Saint-tier battle skill could be said to be hiding within the figure. It could also be said to be hiding within the stone tablet. Only after a person's mind had resonated with the tablet would they be brought to another world to comprehend the Saint-tier battle skill. Saint-tier battle skills were different from ordinary battle skills. Many Saint-tier battle skills were not recorded in books. Rather, they would carved into a stone tablet as a legacy. An energy that originated from the world would be hidden inside, allowing the tablet to exist for eternity and become almost indestructible. Jian Chen was extremely excited since he had obtained a Saint-tier battle skill. The Flame Mercenaries had already reached a certain scale in size now. They possessed many Heaven-tier cultivation methods and battle skills, and the only thing they lacked were Saint-tier battle skills. The Saint-tier battle skill right before him could make up for this aspect. Also, Jian Chen found a Saint-tier cultivation method within the space ring. It was recorded on the fur of a Class 9 magical beast. It had been reduced to a sorry state, but all the words recorded were still present. Unfortunately, there was nothing else in the space ring other than those two items. However, Jian Chen was extremely happy with his harvest even though that was the case. In the blink of an eye, Jian Chen and the others had already stayed in the depths for a whole day. They found a few more space rings during that time, but all of them were unfortunately useless. They had all broken. Hong Lian had already put out the flames around her. She now wore the clan treasure of the Phoenix clan. She used the origin energy armor to repel the invasion of the energies. He Yu and Rui Jin equipped similar armors as well. They no longer used their own energies to repel the invading yin qi and grudges. The three of them were all saving energy. There was no energy of the world within the death nest, only endless amounts of yin qi and the grudges of the dead. They could not replenish their used energy at all. Jian Chen and Tai Ta had also been persuaded by Rui Jin to enter the artifact space, but they both declined the offer. The energies they used were extraordinary, and consumptions like this were nothing to them. Chapter 1144. The Saint's Fruit appears. Jian Chen and the others had stayed in the very depths of the Death Cavern for 3 whole days. During that period of time, they always moved around and maintained an extremely low profile. They would avoid any vengeful spirits they could to save up strength for a final fight. Jian Chen and the others came across Gustis again during the 3 days. He ended up fighting with Hong Lian, but he was firmly suppressed by her flames. In the end, he was chased away by Hong Lian's Phoenix clan's treasure. Even though that was what happened, Rui Jin and the others all felt shocked by Gusti's strength. If they did not use their origin energy treasures, they would not be able to do anything to him. They would not even be his opponent. During those 3 days, they had traveled through half of the 3rd zone. Unfortunately, they did not come across any signs of the Saint's Fruit. They did, however, find a few space rings, but they had all been destroyed, so they obtained nothing. After making it past a hill, everyone in Jian Chen's party narrowed their eyes. They virtually gazed in the same direction at the same time. Within the churning black mist was the faint flickering of a multicolored light. It was extremely weak, but it was still eye-catching within the mist. All of their eyes shined with interest. They stared unblinkingly at the flickering light. This was the first time they had seen the existence of another light source ever since they had entered the death nest. Without any verbal signals or agreements, all of them walked toward the light. They were all filled with caution. As they approached the place, the flickering light became brighter and more blinding. In the end, they finally discovered what the multicolored light was. It was a small, man-sized tree that stood there all alone. It glowed with a blinding 5-colored light that enveloped a radius of 1,000 meters. The yin qi and grudges of the dead could not approach this region. It almost seemed like this region was an independent space. The small tree had a total of 9 leaves. Each leaf radiated with a hazy light, and it was very beautiful. They all seemed like flowers, protecting a fist-sized fruit inside. The fruit was red in color, but it shined with a rainbow light. A profound presence hidden within the fruit could be vaguely sensed. It contained the truths of the world. The Saint's Fruit. This should be the Saint's Fruit. Jian Chen exclaimed. He was extremely excited. After so many twists and turns, he finally found the legendary Saint's Fruit in the death nest. What a wondrous fruit. It can actually grow in the death nest even though it is filled with vile energies, He Yu said in amazement. He found it rather unbelievable. The Saint's Fruit seemed to be filled with holiness. Logically, a fruit like that should have only appeared in a blessed land filled with spiritual energy, yet it grew in the gloomy death nest. This was indeed unbelievable, almost illogical. Mo Tianyun used the corpses of countless fallen experts from ancient times to build the death nest. He used his abilities to draw out the essence within these experts to create such a heaven-defying fruit. What a great approach, Rui Jin softly murmured. He felt complete admiration for Mo Tianyun. More accurately, the Saint's Fruit grows by absorbing the essence and essence blood of those experts. It's a fruit of supreme vileness, yet it just seems divine. It really does seem like a fruit of the saints. I understand now. Mo Tianyun really did possess great abilities. He actually forcefully transformed yin into yang by using a mysterious reversal of the infinite to transform evil into good. He used an absolute technique to transform the nature of the fruit, nullifying the evil energy within the saint's fruit, which was why the evil fruit became a true fruit of the saints. It possesses heaven-defying effects and can assist people in breaking through to Saint Emperor, Hong Lian said. She stared at the fruit as her face filled with shock. Rui Jin's eyes also turned golden. 2 streaks of light shot out as he gazed around the area. He was using a secret technique of the Dragon Clan. Did Mo Tianyun really do so much to create this zone of danger just to grow the saint's fruit? Rui Jin murmured. Flames began to dance in Hong Lian's eyes. She also used a secret technique of the Phoenix Clan to observe the surroundings. She gradually frowned. On the surface, it seems like the death nest was indeed created for the saint's fruit, but the death nest seems to serve a much greater use than that from my observations. He Yu and Jian Chen both frowned when they heard Hong Lian and Rui Jin. They had originally thought that the death nest existed for the saint's fruit, but only after hearing Rui Jin and Hong Lian speak did they understand that the death nest probably did not exist just for the saint's fruit. Why did Mo Tianyun create a place like this? What did he want to do, and what is the other use of the death nest? Rui Jin murmured. His eyes had stopped shining, but they now brimmed with interest. He was filled with an intense curiosity. Hong Lian also stopped using her secret technique. She said, Mo Tianyun really is worthy of being the most powerful human in the past. The secret techniques of my Phoenix Clan are not enough to see through the secrets of this place. There's another color on the saint's fruit. There's 6 colors now, Jian Chen suddenly said. Everyone focused their attention on the saint's fruit again. Indeed, they discovered that the 9 leaves now glowed with another color. They were 6-colored now while the fruit remained rainbow. The light from the fruit became more intense with an extra color now on the leaves. The area enveloped by the light expanded to 1,500 kilometers now as a special fragrance began to pervade the surroundings. A single breath of allowed Jian Chen and the others to gather focus while a comfortable feeling filled their souls. The fragrance of the saint's fruit drifted into the distance and actually drew over all the surrounding Saint Emperor vengeful spirits. Very soon, several demonic figures drifted over from afar, entering the region basking in the light. In the end, they stopped 100 meters from the fruit and sat down, beginning to meditate and cultivate. The light from the fruit could not harm the vengeful spirits. Instead, the spirits absorbed the fragrance of the fruit and became even more tangible. They benefited from it a lot. The fragrance of the fruit drifted very far away and drew over many vengeful spirits. Soon, more and more Saint Emperor spirits drifted over from all directions. The Saint Emperor vengeful spirits that gathered here increased. The expression of Jian Chen and the others became ugly. Now that so many vengeful spirits had gathered, it would undoubtedly make it much more difficult for them when the time arrived to collect the fruit. Let's retreat quickly to retain our strength. It's best if we don't end up fighting these vengeful spirits, Rui Jin said to the others through a communication technique. They immediately began to silently retreat. However, 3 vengeful spirits appeared in front of them just after they had retreated a few dozen meters. They just happened to obstruct their path. Shit! Jian Chen's heart sank. The 5 of them had already been discovered by the 3 vengeful spirits, so they could no longer hide. Without saying anything, the 3 vengeful spirits attacked them. The disturbance was so great that the mist and energies within the death nest began to violently churn. Rui Jin, Heiyu, and Hong Lian went up to receive the attacks. They used all their origin energy treasures and attacked abruptly, wanting to deal with the 3 vengeful spirits quickly. The 3 spirits were not their opponents. Their bodies collapsed from the attack several times very quickly. They could not use their strength to the fullest before the origin energy weapons. The 5 of them were not very far from the saint's fruit. Drawn over by the fragrance, almost all the vengeful spirits of the region had gathered there. The sounds of battle alerted the other vengeful spirits very quickly, including those that were meditating around the fruit. Immediately, all the vengeful spirits stood up and rushed toward Rui Jin and the others. Chapter 1145. A bitter battle over 20 Saint Emperor vengeful spirits struck out at the same time, which greatly increased the pressure that Rui Jin, Heiyu, and Hong Lian were under. After all, they were not just facing a few vengeful spirits anymore. There were some that were extremely powerful, maybe not as strong as Gusty's, but they were not far off in terms of strength. As a result, even with their 3 origin energy treasures, the 3 of them fell to a slight disadvantage under the encirclement of over 20 vengeful spirits. Jian Shen and Tai Ta also used everything they had to keep a vengeful spirit busy each. They wished to reduce Rui Jin, Hong Lian, and He Yu's burden, but they were nowhere near as strong as the 3 of them. Their strength was quite far from the great perfection of Saint King, so all they could do was circle about the vengeful spirit as they fought. More and more Saint Emperor vengeful spirits gathered because of the effects of the Saint's fruit. All of them participated in the encirclement against the 5 of them, causing the pressure to increase by more and more. The Saint Emperor vengeful spirits handled by Jian Shen and Tai Ta increased from 1 to 2. Even when they used everything they had against a single vengeful spirits, all they could do was circle about with much difficulty. Now that another one had suddenly appeared, their situation immediately became disastrous. They quickly became injured. The golden light around Tai Ta had almost dispersed. The light darkened slightly and a strand of extremely pure yin qi invaded his body. It rapidly devoured his vitality and froze his body. Jian Shen also became injured. A streak of blood ran from the corner of his body. His chaotic Niden spat out strands of chaotic force to contend with the invading yin qi. His soul was also attacked by the grudges of the dead, leading to stabbing pain and great dizziness. These energies originated from the Saint Emperor vengeful spirits. Even though Jian Shen's soul was very strong, he could not resist this powerful energy. More and more vengeful spirits gathered, reaching 50 in number very quickly. Rui Jin, Hong Lian, and He Yu became trapped in an encirclement. They became rather busy with handling the attacks from so many vengeful spirits, so they could no longer bother with Jian Shen and Tai Ta. However, they still tried to attract a few vengeful spirits over to reduce the pressure Jian Shen and Tai Ta were under. Enter the artifact space. Rui Jin's voice boomed in the black mist of the vengeful spirits. Jian Shen hesitated. The Saint artifact was not extremely tough. An attack from Saint King's at great perfection was the most it could withstand. Although the vengeful spirits were not as powerful as when they were alive, the strength they retained was still nothing to underestimate. Thus, he fell into a dilemma, debating on whether or not the Saint artifact could withstand the attacks of the vengeful spirits. Bang! With a muffled sound, a vengeful spirit silently appeared behind Jian Shen. It struck Jian Shen's back with a punch, sending him flying. This was the 3rd vengeful spirit Jian Shen had to handle. With his current strength, he could only hold off 1 Saint Emperor vengeful spirit at most. 2 was already his limit, and he would not be able to last for very long. He would be utterly doomed if a 3rd one appeared. Jian Shen vomited a mouthful of blood. He flew uncontrollably for several hundred meters before falling to the ground after striking a few large trees. At the same time, Tai Ta was knocked flying with his battle axe and flickering golden light. He just happened to land near Jian Shen. The light on his body had dulled and his face was pale. A trail of golden blood ran from the corner of his lips. Jian Shen, these vengeful spirits are just too powerful. We can't defeat them, so we better leave here quick, Tai Ta said. He was extremely stern. Up ahead, 4 Saint Emperor vengeful spirits quickly approached the 2 of them. The other 2 spirits had transformed into dense yin qi and grudges, quickly drifting over as well. Let's go! Jian Shen yelled. He grabbed Tai Ta as he quickly fled to the outskirts. However, before he could even travel 100 meters, the 2 of them came across another 2 vengeful spirits that were hurrying over to the fruit. The 2 of them began to attack Jian Shen and Tai Ta without any hesitation, blocking their path. Kept busy, the 6 other vengeful spirits managed to catch up. 8 Saint Emperor vengeful spirits now attacked them at the same time. Jian Shen and Tai Ta had basically nowhere to run now. They were encircled by the vengeful spirits and could not flee. Tai Ta, don't resist. Let's enter the artifact space. Jian Chen yelled. With that, a blinding golden light suddenly appeared. A 10-meter-tall golden tower appeared out of nowhere, and the two of them were sucked away as soon as it emerged. The 8 vengeful spirits immediately turned their attention to the tower now that Jian Chen and Tai Ta had disappeared. 2 of them rapidly swung their fists at the artifact while 4 other spirits shot out strands of evil energy as streaks of black light. The final 2 spirits transformed into dense, dark mist, enveloping the saint artifact and eating away at it with their pure vile energies. Under the control of the artifact spirit, the tower shrank to the size of a fist. It moved left and right in attempt to break free from the encirclement. However, the artifact was only an auxiliary treasure. It possessed a powerful interior but weak exterior, so its powers outside were extremely limited. Other than being extraordinarily tough, the artifact had no other advantages. It was trapped tightly between the 8 vengeful spirits, unable to flee at all. It was knocked around many times. The artifact space felt the violent attacks too. The entire world inside violently shook, causing the ground to quake. The countless magical beasts that lived there were alarmed. Great dark clouds had already started to appear in the hazy white sky of the space. They shrouded the sky and enveloped the entire world. This was the invading vile energies. Jian Chen and Tai Ta stared at the dark clouds with rather pale faces from the central hall of the artifact space. They were grim and filled with worry. The saint artifact was their final line of defense. If even the saint artifact was not enough to resist them, it would be completely useless even if he brought out the divine hall of the Bloodsword sect as well. This was because the saint artifact's toughness was greater than many divine halls. Probably only the Bright Moon Divine Hall was tougher than it. You're tuning into the Biyao's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.